I'm looking at the list right now and I'm looking at number one. You only need one client paying you 2K a month to create a life of freedom.
Yeah, so this is the first tenet because I think it's the biggest mindset shift to start seeing reality differently. When you realize that there are 8 billion people in the world and one person paying you $2,000 a month for something, okay? It could be anything. And we're going to get into what those things could actually be as we go. But let's say for a service, or let's say for a more of a coaching position, right? One person in the entire world of 8 billion people paying you $2,000 a month means you can live a life of nearly absolute freedom. Now, some nuance and some context here is that $2,000 a month is one, not a lot of money. And two, if you are, let's say, a 50-year-old parent with a mortgage and a car payment and insurance and kids to feed and a dog to feed, right? $2,000 a month in the online business space is probably not enough to make a leap to do it full time unless you have like capital saved up, which would be great. But however, we're expecting that the majority of people that are going to be listening to this podcast are going to be attracted to us and magnetized to our frequency because we're young dudes in this game. I'm 23, Will's 26. We imagine that a lot of kids, the ages 18 to like, let's say 28, 30, without responsibilities, without a mortgage, without a big car payment or something like that, can have the flexibility and mobility to create a life of freedom if they truly desire it, making only $2,000 a month. So Will and I were just in Thailand for quite a long time, and we think like if you really were careful with your finances, you could live off of $1,000 a month there, $1,500 a month there. And if you have one client paying you that amount of money, you could be theoretically working 2 hours a week, making a full-time living, and then you have 166 hours a week to do whatever you want. And so freedom is not when you retire, it's not when you're 65, it's not when you go on vacation. You can create a life of freedom now by learning a modern skill and learning how to position that skill and create an offer and provide value and sign a client that can pay you 2K a month to make a full-time living.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what I would just tell any of my friends, in a 9 to 5 job is, dude, you only need 2K. And I feel like a lot of people in the West, US, for example, they miss this fact because life's so much more expensive in the West.
Mhm.
Whereas, I lived in Thailand and it was 2K a month, living in pretty nice spot, training martial arts, eating out a lot. Like, I guess people just don't know this. It's once it clicks and once you see your first online dollar, it kind of all makes a lot more sense how close freedom is, I feel like.
Yeah, and another point here that's a big mindset shift when you begin to get into a freelancing role or entrepreneurial role is that you go from talking about yearly salary to talking about monthly income because the game of entrepreneurship moves much faster than a typical 9 to 5 job. It's such a status signal in the West to say, oh, I'm making 75K out of college. Oh, I got 100K baseline salary plus a 20K a year bonus. That's cool, right? But if you break down that into a month and actually how much you're working, you can make much more in the entrepreneurial game with leverage, with time. And another big thing here, if you really want to achieve a life of freedom, you're going to have to transcend playing a status game or take a hit to your social status in the short run so that you can create the life you want in the long run. Because when all your friends are making 100K doing finance, let's say, and you say, no, I'm going to go right on the internet and make 2K a month and live in Thailand, in the eyes of society and maybe your parents and your peers, you are delusional. You're not successful. You're only making 24K a year. But the big mindset shift that I've made has been I'm optimizing for freedom over a salary or income. In this way, you're living a life that's truly on your own terms and discovering what you ultimately want to do with your life rather than spending your days behind a desk doing something that doesn't really light your soul up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think once you know what you want, you realize this freedom thing is the whole thing. Because ultimately, like your whole life is just gonna boil down to each moment. I feel like in the West, people get caught up on milestones, like promotions, getting married, but it's really all about like what did each day of your life look like? Were you excited? Were you having fun? Like today, we were kind of talking about before the call. Like I feel like right now I'm playing like a video game or something. And that's kind of what that freedom feels like. And you don't need much money to get started in that feeling on a daily basis, which is the whole, I don't know, human experience. Would you not say?
Most definitely.
Let's maybe rock over to the second tenet here. Each skill you add doubles your odds of success.
Yeah, so this is originally an idea I heard from Scott Adams, who's kind of like a writer thinker, and I've experienced it myself. And I believe in this evolving online business landscape, in this online business creator economy game, no longer are you going to be able to be single dimensional in terms of your skill set to really achieve success. You might be able to, but it's going to be more difficult. So we can take two examples. Person A, and we're talking a lot about freelancers here, like those first steps to freedom. Freelancer A only knows how to do email copywriting. Okay, kind of a valuable skill set. Depending on your client, you could get paid 300 to a couple $1,000s a month as an email marketer, let's say. Now, let's compare that freelancer with freelancer B, who knows email marketing, social media ghostwriting, funnel building, web design, lead generation, ads, lead magnet creation, email sequence creation, digital product creation. Those are 9 different skills off the bat. And so when it comes to a business owner or a potential client choosing between freelancer A or B, freelancer B is infinitely more valuable and is going to get immensely more opportunities and be able to charge much higher prices and might actually even be able to work himself into the business and capture a part of the leverage of that business. So to expand on that, freelancer A is still pretty much trading his time for money. He's only writing emails. Whereas freelancer B, with this broad multidimensional skill set, can actually create a product or an email course for that business owner and then capture the upside revenue on what he's created. And so the more skills you add to your tool bag, the more weapons you have in your arsenal, essentially, the more valuable you're going to become. And also the more quickly you're going to be able to pivot to doing your own thing and not working for somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the guy with those 9 skills, I just instantly think like that guy's a millionaire because you can just do so much. So I think the world really opens up with each skill you add because you start to spot more and more unique opportunities. Do you want to maybe talk a bit about that? How these intersections and kind of connecting the dots can create new opportunities for yourself?
For sure. Yeah. So freelancer B, because he has a broader skill set, he can spot opportunities that freelancer A can't. Now, I'll give a personal example here because I think it conveys it well. I have in the past created my own job out of thin air working for somebody else because I had a broad skill set and I could see an opportunity that wasn't being taken advantage of and that nobody else could see. So originally I was just a ghostwriter. I needed to be told what to do and I just wrote for people's social media accounts. But as I started creating my own products and brand and adding more skills to my arsenal, I was able to see things that I previously couldn't see. Now, this also coincides with the internal game of raising your consciousness and seeing things that you can't previously see, but we're going to get into that later. So, what happened was I was looking for a source of freelancing income, and I asked myself, who do I want to work with? I want to work with somebody who is aligned with my values and on a similar path to myself. And so I looked to a big podcaster, a spiritual creator. His name's Aubrey Marcus. And I looked at his brand and business and I saw a bunch of holes in it. He wasn't posting on Twitter. He didn't have a good email capture. He didn't have a good email marketing strategy. He wasn't cross posting his podcast clips anywhere. He wasn't utilizing Twitter threads or threads. He wasn't on LinkedIn. He didn't have a set up LinkedIn. And so I saw all these holes and I said, I can plug in and do this for them. And so there wasn't even a job position open, but through a connection that I had, which we're going to get into networking to later, I proposed this idea through a chain of command and it reached him and he really liked it. And I got hired. Now, about a month after being hired, I realized I didn't want to do this at all. I want to do my own thing. But I believe I went through that to learn the skill of you can create your own position out of thin air if you have enough skills and you can see things sufficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you become a true creator. It's like creative mode. Uh,
Yeah,
I used to play Minecraft growing up, kind of nerdy. And I like to think of each skill as maybe like a tool you use in that game, maybe. So at the
most
beginning, like
definitely.
maybe all you get is like an axe because you're like, well, there's trees all around me. I can chop wood and get wood. And then, from there you get a pickaxe, you can go mine stuff, you get a shovel, you can dig things, and before you know it, you can build, amazing structures and new things. And I think each skill you add makes this feel like more of a creative game where you can do almost anything. I know you've learned web design, and although you could have outsourced that, now you have that skill and you can just create your own websites and make it exactly how you want it to be and combine that with your content, curriculum stuff, and then go market that. And you can basically do whatever you want. So, yeah, I can definitely see that each skill you add doubles your odds of success. Any more thoughts on that, or would you want to move to the next tenant?
Yeah, one more thought to just hammer it home. I like how you use the Minecraft analogy. I'm going to use a sports analogy. So you could imagine a basketball player who can only shoot spot up threes. That's it. He can catch the ball and shoot threes. Okay, he might be valuable for a team and he has a role, but then you compare him to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan can shoot the three. He can dribble. He can get to his own spot. He can post up. He can fade away. He can drive. He can play defense. And so it makes him incredibly more valuable to any team. And of course, he's going to get paid way more than the 3-point specialist. And so value is one part of this. Freedom is the other part, which you alluded to, of like, if you know how to make a website, if you know how to do a marketing sequence, if you know how to create a product and what is actually valuable, you have freedom to basically create whatever your mind can think up.
Yep. Yep. And I think I think a big part of the flow that makes this whole process so enjoyable is being autonomous and creative. I think it's choosing your own things to make and being able to do almost anything. And
Yes,
I
I
think it
want
just
to add
depends.
one thing too, as well.
Yeah.
I think it's relevant is that somebody might be listening and ask, like, okay, what skill do I learn? Or how do I know what skills to add? In my experience, you add skills necessary for the next step in building your own thing. This is why building your own thing is so important too. Because when you're building your own brand, let's say you're going to build your own brand, you eventually are going to create an offer. Like you're going to come up against roadblocks and problems that prevent you from doing it. Okay, I know a little bit about fitness. I'm starting to write on Twitter. Now I want to create an offer. Cool. Now I have to learn how to market it. I have to learn how to present that offer. I have to learn how to build an email list. I have to learn how to build a website. And so you learn it as you do it, and then you can take that skill set and apply it to a freelancing position while still retaining your autonomy and long-term vision that you want to do what you want, or you want to do your own thing in the long term, which is kind of tying into number 3.
Yeah. Number three, I'm looking at it here. You can freelance with a skill without associating your brand with that skill or identifying as a freelancer.
Yeah, so this is a big one. And I see a lot of people fall into this trap of pigeonholing themselves into one skill and one niche and not allowing themselves to expand beyond it and ever escape the game of freelancing. Because ultimately, in my opinion, the highest expression for a human being is not to work for another human being. It's to be creative, it's to be autonomous and build your own thing. And so when you box yourself into one frame as you see these people on Twitter or LinkedIn all the time. It's like Jake, email marketer, or like Sam,
Man,
web design. It's like,
crushes my
bro,
soul. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, you have to have empathy because they're just doing what they think is right. And it's giving them a sense of stability and security to say, I am this, I do this. But
Mm.
they don't realize that inherently they are so much more than an email marketer. They are so much more than a web designer. And so I've been a ghostwriter and freelancer for a few years, and I have never labeled myself once on the internet as a ghostwriter. What would happen is I built my own brand and displayed my own skill set. And then through the back channels and through networking, I would tell people, this is what I do, this is what I offer, and here's how I can help you. And so I would get paid to be a ghostwriter, email marketer, web designer, whatever it is, without ever associating my brand with that. So it allows me to pivot and expand beyond it into, now I'm a creator coach, I'm a performance coach, I'm a spiritual coach, I'm a community builder, I'm a retreat host, whatever. But if I had labeled myself as email marketer or web design from the beginning and put myself into that box, I would have built an audience that was only interested in my web design knowledge. But by writing about whatever I want to write about and speaking about whatever I feel inspired to speak about, while honing and developing and leveraging my skill on the side, I can still get paid as a freelancer, but I can maintain the long-term autonomy and freedom to continuously pivot to the point of getting paid to express my highest soul's frequency and be myself, which is, in my opinion, the highest aim of this game and the entire root reason of why we are on this path in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is kind of a 9 to 5 uh, type of mindset, which is honestly a good place to start. Is just pick one skill you can be good at, learn it, and start applying it. But I think it can be a box, and I personally found myself in that box of I started with direct response copywriting, and there's just so many more things I can do, and I've slowly been kind of branching out, and it just feels like now the world is so much more open, and the business opportunities seem almost like too many now at this point. So it's a good spot once you start stacking these skills. I think one thing, a question I had for you is, let's say you're learning a new skill. How does that process for you look? Because I think some people would have a process of like a lot of preparation, a lot of knowledge. How would you go about learning a new skill like web design, for example?
I think the first root thing is you have to detach your self-worth from the presentation of that skill. This is what holds a lot of people back from pressing publish on a newsletter, from putting a website out there. It has to be perfect. What are people going to think? Are they going to judge me? I have to have it absolutely dialed before I put it out to the world. Whereas in reality, mastery of any skill does not happen through time, it happens through iteration. Meaning, the first website you put out is the biggest step, and then each subsequent iteration is going to be better and better, and you're going to be able to do it faster and faster. But if you wait behind the scenes and trying to perfect your perfect website for a year, the guy who pushed his first website out there and then continuously iterated on it for the whole year is going to be way ahead of the person who needed it to be perfect. And so, yeah, to answer your question more succinctly, it is put your thing out there. Okay, you learn the web design software. And what I use is Vercel, V0 by Vercel. You can just vibe code your own website. Put it out there. Then you iterate continuously throughout your days and your weeks to the point of like, now you can whip up a website within probably a few hours and maybe eventually with AI, a few minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Like, yeah, it's that perfectionism, but I think the flow is in that constant iteration and the feedback as well.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing too about social media is You put a tweet out, it's not like you published a book, right? The tweet is going to disappear from the timeline tomorrow and it's going to be forgotten about forever. So there's really no downside to just practicing and putting in the reps with whatever it is. It's copywriting, it's social media writing, it's web building, web design building. Put it out there, don't attach to it, and trust in the long-term iteration and evolution of what you're doing.
I love it. Any more thoughts on that third tenet? You can freelance skill without associating your brand with that skill or identifying as a freelancer.
Final thought is that most of the most successful freelancers I've met do not define themselves as a freelancer. They are their own creators. They build their own brands, and then they build a reputation that is even more powerful than the most dialed in outreach freelancing technique. Your reputation and what you've built yourself is more important.
Yeah, I feel that. I think when you allow yourself to explore more facets of your skill set and who you are and your interests, you'll naturally meet more people than networking as will the copywriting guy. Because when you're networking in that domain, it's like you only want to talk about copywriting. You only want to find and meet people who might, have something with the copywriting. But I think if you go to retreat, for example, and you're, exploring like a more spiritual side, self growth, you meet someone there who's actually a marketer and they need a copywriter, as an example. You just expanding your luck surface area by not niching yourself into one portion of the internet and the people out there as well. Like there's a big network portion to, not boxing yourself in and being multifaceted. I think it makes you more unique. It makes it much easier to meet people, and you're not even really networking in quotes, like LinkedIn networking, where you just want something. It's more natural, I think, when you kind of follow your interests, follow the skills you want to build, find people doing the same kind of thing, find other people who are these unique creators. I feel like that's such a powerful point.
Most definitely. Yeah, all my biggest opportunities have come from friendships.
Yeah, that's a big one. For to have the impact you want to have, you have to learn to play the game, and you play the game to be free of the game.
Yeah. So this is something I've said online many times, so it's cool to get a chance to explain this. So, okay, to have the impact you want to have, you have to learn to play the game. Let's start there, and then we'll talk about being free of the game later. So, playing the game means learning the subtle tactics and nuanced strategies to succeed at the game. So, a lot of these people, especially a lot of the spiritual types, or the types who have a natural moral superiority complex disguised as like I'm doing the right thing, but it's really kind of delusion in a way because they are not learning how to play the game of business, play the game of social media. And so what this typically looks like is somebody who has done a lot of reading, done a lot of inner work, they start, let's say, writing on social media, and they just expect everybody to start reading their stuff and to start retweeting their stuff and blow up and become incredibly famous and successful. Now that can happen, especially if you're like vibrating at a really high frequency. I see people on YouTube all the time. They're just like these random dudes in the jungle sitting there posting videos, just talking, but the frequency is so resonant that it catches on and they do go viral. They do become successful. But in the initial stages, playing the game is quite necessary to be successful. So, what does playing the game mean? Playing the game means learning the principles of retention, learning the principles of attention and retention. How do you make somebody interested in what you're saying? Can you learn the basic principles of copywriting? Can you learn the basic principles of persuasion? Can you learn the principles of networking, of game theory, of having mutually beneficial agreements? So, to give more context to this, I'll go back into the origins of my experience. yes, I was writing good content. And if if you're not writing good content, but you're using these different strategies, it's not going to matter. These strategies are amplifiers to what you are creating. And so a few of the strategies that I used in the initial stages of the game, which helped me grow my audience and gain authority and take my unique specific knowledge and skill set to other creators and help them grow their brands, was networking groups, let's say, mutually beneficial shares. So, okay, like there's another creator with around the same followers as me. I'm going to retweet his posts 3 times a week. He's going to retweet my post 3 times a week. Now, somebody who's not in the game might say, oh, that's inauthentic. That's not ethical. That's not moral. But if it's a positive sum agreement and both parties not only want to grow, but want to have an impact on humanity as a result of the brand they've built, then in a way, it is actually moral. It's moral to learn how to play the game of business, of social media growth, of creating a good hook, of keeping people's attention, if the energy behind the action is one of pureness, is of authenticity, and is of wanting to impact humanity in a positive way. So if you want to impact the world in the way that you think you can, and you might not know what that looks like yet, but you will start to discover it as you go, especially in the early stages, you have to learn how to play the game.
Let's talk about the second part. And you play the game to be free of the game.
Yeah, so eventually, after long enough of doing different tactics like these, or another thing we haven't spoke on is paying for growth or paying for another creator to retweet your stuff, let's say, or repost your stuff. After a long enough time, and once you build a really authentic audience, and let me touch on the retweets, like paying for retweets or paying for reposts. Mostly you grow on social media because you are shared or reposted by a bigger account. So let's say I talk to an account that has 100,000 followers and I have 5,000 followers. And my message is resonant with his audience and it would positively impact his audience and his audience would like it. If I pay him for a retweet, I'm essentially paying for exposure, just like a commercial on a TV show, just like an advertising spot on a podcast. I'm paying for awareness. Now, that awareness does not mean somebody's going to buy my stuff or follow my account or even read my post, right? If the content is shit, nobody's going to read it. If the product is shit, nobody's going to buy it, even if it is the biggest ad slot in the Super Bowl. It has to be good still. But playing the game means using strategies like leveraging other people's audiences, aka expanding your reach, so that you have a higher probability of more people seeing your message and then becoming your own fan and your own follower. So that is a little bit on the paid retweets or paid reposts of any type of kind, or like story share on Instagram. It's all the same. You're paying for leverage, you're paying for reach, but you still have to be good for people to care. Eventually, you do that for long enough, you build your own audience, you build your own traction, you build your own momentum that you don't have to do that stuff anymore. You become free of it. You just are sharing your own stuff and you're naturally growing because you have momentum that's kicked in over time. And at that point, you're free of the game. At that point, you don't have to use those tactics anymore, although you might still continue to if it makes sense for your brand and business.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned the Super Bowl, and what came to mind was Doritos is buying ads to sell, whatever Doritos are, you know, and they have PR teams, ad teams, partnerships with, I don't know, Mountain Dew. It's probably the same company, but either or, like companies are doing this. And as you said, like to have the impact you want to have, if you have good intentions, there's a game being played in business and advertising and influence that I think is important to learn. So I think it's a really good point. But I think the silver lining is if once you've been playing the game for a while, by the game's rules and winning, that gives you the freedom to kind of turn and look at the game and say, like, okay, I'm good. Now that I know the game, I played it, I have some momentum. I'm going to play it my way. And that can be even more powerful once you understand the basics of the game, I think.
I'm with you. And to give a different kind of example of like Doritos, are they really trying to help humanity? I don't know. But let's say you're listening to a podcast and you hear an ad spot for a new supplement that is really going to help your health, or like a new sleep device that's going to help you get deeper sleep. If the product's good, you're not going to be upset that the podcast advertised it. You're probably going to be like, "Oh, this is awesome. Like I want to use this too. This is great." And so, in the same way, if a smaller creator pays a bigger creator to repost their stuff, or they have some type of friendship or some type of deal, the majority of people are not going to be upset at that repost. They're going to be actually grateful, like, oh, there's this new cool guy that I would love to learn more about that is now in my awareness because they don't know, but behind the scenes, he decided to play the game.
Yeah, this is a huge one, I think, and I think definitely an area of focus, especially in the beginning. Any more thoughts around this tenant number 4?
I think the last thought would be the moral superiority complex types, the ones who subconsciously hate business and hate money, oftentimes end up resenting the game and saying the game's rigged and saying it's all bullshit. That's fine. Like, that's cool. That's a great mindset. I think it's fine. If that's the case and you don't want to play the game, then just don't attach to the outcome. Don't become upset when the results might not come in.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a good one too. Um, yeah, these I mean, I've definitely been in this camp of like, oh, this shouldn't be how the game works. It should just be this and that. But I mean, the reality is there. It's just learn it, so you can play the game, and you'll likely have more impact if you learn how the game works and play it than if you end up saying the game's rigged and working some job for, I don't know, a weapons defense contractor or something.
Right.
Like as a more extreme example.
Right. And another
So
key point, I think last point here is like, once you learn the nuances of the game, you can then always come back to your own internal compass and ask, is this in integrity? Is this in integrity with myself? Is this in integrity with others? Is this in integrity with God? And just because you know a skill does not mean you're out of integrity. You can always verify it through yourself if what you're doing is truly aligned.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think the big picture point is to kind of really look at what you consider right and wrong, and maybe ask yourself, is this more so I just want to look virtuous, or is this, actually not in integrity? Because some things are, common practice in the game. They're not, something that I would practice, or you would practice, or other people would want to practice, and that's fine. You don't even have to do those things to play the game. If something is innocent as a retweet, a paid retweet, I think you really have to ask, like, okay, am I just trying to look virtuous? Am I just trying to look a certain way to myself? And I think it's a big self honesty thing on this one.
Yes.
Let's hop to tenant number 5. Orient your decisions around leverage, freedom, and alignment above anything else.
Yes. So honestly, this could be summed up into orient your decisions around freedom. And why? Why do you want that? Well, I want that so that I can be free to express my gifts to their greatest degree and live the life I want on my own terms. So if you start from the beginning with the mindset of I want to orient my decisions around leverage, meaning where your time and money are not connected and your impact and time are not connected, freedom in terms of living where you want, working when you want, not being on meetings, and living a life of maximum freedom and autonomy, and alignment in terms of what are you working on? Is it in alignment with your energy? Is it in alignment with your higher self? Is it in alignment with God? If you can adopt that mindset from the beginning, you will avoid accidentally falling into different traps along the way. And those traps are usually things that look like some type of golden handcuffs. So you get an opportunity to, let's say you've been making some traction in the game and you have a skill set, you have a reputation, you get an opportunity to make $500,000 a year working for somebody else. It's very shiny on the surface. And maybe you do it for a year, maybe you do it for 2 years and you stack a bunch of money and then you become free. That's a cool path too. And maybe if you know that from the beginning, you're willing to say, I'm going to do this for 1 or 2 years so that I can go build my own thing for the rest of my life. But if you have no perspective on leverage, freedom, and alignment, this is what honestly leads to people working a 9 to 5 job, because they don't understand the principle of leverage, disconnection between inputs and outputs. They don't understand the value of freedom. They don't understand the value of true soul integrity and alignment with your work. And so from the beginning, and again, I'll kind of highlight my path, is there was a point in my path where I had a choice between, I have 3 freelancing clients ghostwriting right now, and I'm making $7K a month, and I'm only working maybe 8 hours a week, 8 to 10 hours a week. So I have most of my week free to myself. Pretty good income, especially living in Argentina or any third world country. I could have scaled an agency like many would do, scale a ghostwriting agency, and kind of put myself into that box and then accidentally build myself into a new 9 to 5 or something that I really don't want to do, or something that lacks autonomy and true soul expression for the sake of building something with higher income ceiling, let's say. But what I always came back to was, I'm going to play the really long game here. I'm going to cap out my freelancing income and time at 5 to 10 hours a week and 5 to 7K a month, which gives me a lot of freedom to do my own thing on the side. But instead of scaling the agency and making more money and signing more clients, I personally would rather hold my income at that level and work to build my own thing on the side that's truly a soul expression and in integrity with what I ultimately want, rather than make more money in the agency path. And so it can become somewhat of a test, if you know this going into it, of, I'm only gonna make 5K a month intentionally while I'm seeing other people scale to 20 to 50K months ghostwriting. It's like, fuck, am I making the wrong decision? Like, dang, these people are crushing it. But what's happening in all that extra time and space that you have in your days and in your life is you are self-actualizing across all domains, and you're becoming everything you're meant to be. And if you zoom out long enough, 10 years, 20 years, you're going to build leverage around just being your authentic self and just get paid to be yourself. So in my experience, it was sacrifice a little bit of short-term income and status for long-term freedom and leverage.
Hmm. So it's in a way avoiding the shiny object syndrome that I think can be there once you start leveling up and you're in that kind of early middle game and you got that opportunity.
Yes. And I have fallen into that trap many times in my life.
But let's say someone's listening to this and they're just a beginner. Maybe you could dive more into this concept of leverage, because I think this is a key for that kind of beginner stage freedom. This leverage component. I mean, to someone in a 9 to 5, you know, yearly salary. This might be kind of a foreign concept. So maybe just diving a bit more into that. I know you talked a bit about time and energy versus outputs, but maybe just a bit more nuance there.
Yeah. So fundamentally, leverage is a disconnect between your inputs and outputs. It's a Naval saying, so I'll quote him, but he said, leverage is assets that make money for you while you sleep. Now you can even reframe that to be more spiritual. It's like, leverage is assets that make an impact on the world while you sleep. But honestly, like, impact and income are very closely tied together. They're not always, but ideally they are. And so what this looks like is, you build something where it is infinitely replicable, it's infinitely scalable. A few different examples would be, okay, you build a software, you build a software subscription service that you build once and you can sell infinitely. Or you build a course that once it's done, and then it sells asynchronously and helps people asynchronously while you sleep. So how this would work, and people in a 9 to 5 could never experience this because they are trading their time for money. Their inputs and outputs are linear, whereas the inputs and outputs of somebody operating in leverage is nonlinear. What you could do when you start creating for yourself is, say you've overcome any problem in your life. Say you've gone from fat to fit, let's just say. You build a brand around your transformation and around yourself and your unique philosophy. You put that philosophy and actionable steps of what you did to lose the weight into a course for $99. Over the course of a few years, 1,000 people buy that course for $99, which is very realistic if you build an audience and you're consistent. At that point, you're making $100,000 off a course where you build it once and you have to do nothing other than send traffic to that course over time. The same thing applies for a book. A similar principle applies for a community, which once it's built, more people can come. Of course, there's a facilitation aspect there, but then you could have people working for you. So essentially, leverage is building things that can be infinitely scalable and sell for you when you're not actually physically working.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe this is just my more practical brain, but even with a freelancing skill versus a 9 to 5, right? If you learn something that someone will pay you, I know you talked about ghostwriting. It's a really good example. You were making 7K from 3 clients and working 8 hours a week. This is very different to having to wake up at 7 a.m., drive to work at 8, be at work till 5, drive home and get home at 6, tired, and making the same money, if not less. And this is just by, there's leverage also in these high income skills, which is where a lot of people can start out, as you mentioned, with you only need one client paying you 2K a month to create a life of freedom, 10 at one. And I think this leverage just amplifies with the, each skill you're adding, 10 and 2, is doubling your odds of success. And it's also increasing your ability to create leverage with these like courses or software, automations or whatever that, solve problems while you sleep, because you learn more and more skills to create something very unique. So I think 5, orient your decisions around leverage, freedom, and alignment is super strong principle when you're starting out, just to kind of orientate yourself in the game. Do you have any more thoughts on this point?
Yes, last thought is that even from the beginning, getting clear on exactly the life you want to live, and of course that can change over time. But if you really imagine what you want to do, what you want your life to be when you wake up every single day, that will help you make decisions aligned with that ideal life. If you don't know where you're going and you're just kind of living in the now and like, what's the next step in front of me? There is a higher chance that you make decisions misaligned with what your ultimate vision is, which most people don't actually take the time to think about. And if you go on my own YouTube channel, I have some guided meditations on like connecting with that highest frequency, highest timeline to actually feel and know what you want. And then from there, you make decisions, you make strategic moves one at a time as well. But now, from the perspective of, okay, what do I have to do just to make money this month? But how do I make money this month and keep myself on a trajectory towards actualizing my highest vision?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. 6, tenet number 6, luck is a huge part of success, but you can increase your luck surface area through your network, skill set, and authentic expression.
Yes, this is an important one as well. And I'm going to riff on an evolve idea as well, which I'm sure he got from somebody else, about the 4 types of luck. And I have a YouTube video out there somewhere about this too from a while ago. But there are essentially 4 different types of quote unquote luck. The first type of luck is blind luck or luck through fate, like you just win the lottery or something like that. That's awesome, but we can't really control it. It's just random, it's fate. And so we don't want to focus on it. The second type of luck is luck through action. And so by running around, creating a ton of energy and taking a lot of action and just putting your name out there, messaging people, being in communities, being super active, your luck surface area is increasing in proportion to the amount of people that know you, the amount of people that know what you do, and the amount of energy you're putting in, and you're showing up everywhere. So you're top of mind. You're leveraging the principle of the mere exposure principle in psychology. The more people know about you, the more people see you, the more they gravitate towards liking you. And people want to work with people that they like. That's another thing with like my ghostwriting thing and different freelancing roles that I've worked is like it has usually been through friendships first, where people are like, I like this dude, I trust him, like he's a good guy, I've seen his brand, he has a good skill set, I want to work with this guy. Again, never labeling myself as a ghostwriter. And that was through taking a lot of action and just showing up everywhere. The third type of luck is spotting opportunities, kind of like what I talked about with the Aubrey Marcus story earlier. When you are in the game for a long enough time and you take a lot of action, so these kind of all build on top of each other too, you can see things that other people can't see. So me, because I've been in the game for years and I understand digital marketing and content creation and traffic, I could spot the Aubrey Marcus opportunity, whereas somebody who is just entering the game without a skill set or somebody in a 9 to 5 couldn't even see the opportunity. So when you create specific knowledge by being in the arena and taking action for a long enough time, you can see things that people can't see. Fourth type of luck is luck through being a unique character, where luck finds you, you magnetize it, you attract success. And this, again, these all tie in with each other. If you don't identify yourself as a freelancer, you can truly create an authentic character. Now, there is an argument if you become the best freelancer in the world at your skill, yeah, you're going to create a unique brand where people find you based on that skill. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you create a unique character in relation to your skill, you can get paid as well for people just coming into your sphere and it looks like luck to the outside. So to sum these points up, luck is not really luck. It appears like luck to an outside person that does not understand what went into the game. And so in my early stages, when I left college and was making 7K a month with 3 clients as a ghostwriter, it looked kind of lucky to the outsider. It looked like, damn, he just like signed 3 clients in like a few weeks and like didn't like he only sent a few outreach messages. Like basically what happened was I got a referral through a podcast guest who became a friend who didn't have capacity in his own agency. We talked after that podcast. I said, hey, I'm looking to be a ghostwriter. Like, let me know if you have any opportunities. A week later, there's a fitness guy who wants a ghostwriter. Talon, who was the podcast guy who had an agency, didn't have space. He referred him to me. Boom, my first 3K client out of nowhere. Then that triggers in my mind, okay, I'm just going to reach back out to all my podcast guests that I've talked to in the past that were fitness coaches and say like, hey, I'm getting into fitness ghostwriting. Like, would you be interested in potentially working together so I could help amplify your brand presence and growth, and you can focus more on the back end business systems and leverage. And so those 3 opportunities to an outsider, it's like, damn, Jack got really lucky. He's just writing about fitness stuff on the internet and he gets to live in Argentina. But the luck manifested in my reality based on the action that I took, the network that I built, the friendships that I made, the authentic expression to just be myself and make friends, and the skill set kind of all fusing together. So if I had to try to sum it up, it's 1, take a lot of action and show up a lot of places, be in different communities, like free communities, paid communities, whatever it is. Have a skill that you can express in your own brand, tell people about what you do and what you want to do, and then make genuine friendships and ask for opportunities if they're there. And if it's aligned, it will manifest.
100%. I think I have 2 thoughts on this. One is you talk about this kind of you've become more lucky through this relentless action. The first thing that comes to my mind is a lot of people getting into this game are young, maybe 20 to 30. And I want to drive home the point that older people talk about, which is in your 20s, you take for granted how much energy you have. But it is like the 20s are a special period where you have the most energy, like you're the youngest, most vital. And I think a trap which stops people from finding their luck is to perhaps overthink things and kind of constrict their luck surface area to one niche thing and not talking to too many people in monk mode and locking in versus embracing your huge amount of energy and just like the more you shoot stuff at the wall and the less you really care in some ways, the more
Yes.
people you'll meet. Like if you had really cared a lot and you were like, okay, I'm a ghostwriter. I got to lock in on ghostwriting. I got to lock in on ghostwriting. I'm going to outreach people. you're like, I'm not gonna do a podcast with a fitness guy because it's not like I got to be talking to marketing people or something, or maybe I don't even need to have a podcast because I got to lock in. Like you have so much energy in this time period, so just go be energetic in different places that feel right to you, which is the authentic expression point, and just drive energy into a skill set maybe, and meet these people, and you can get lucky in this way just
Correct.
by being energetic because it's all energy, I guess you could argue.
Most definitely, yeah, and to add some even more nuance on my ghostwriting journey, I never planned on being a ghostwriter. Even me becoming a ghostwriter was somewhat lucky. I just did podcasts with people that I was interested in, and some of them happened to be ghostwriters. I didn't even know what ghostwriting was when I started writing on the internet. I just heard about it through the friends I made, and then I was like, I think I can do this. And then boom, it happened. But I never planned it. I also never planned being able to build websites. I never planned running cohorts. I never planned running communities or retreats. It all starts to reveal itself as you take action and as you have a vision of what you want. If I didn't have the vision that I didn't want to work a job, I wouldn't have even had the ears to hear somebody talk about ghostwriting. But because my consciousness and awareness was fixated on the destination of, I want to find a way to not have to work a job after college in 2 years, boom, now my awareness is open to all these opportunities that would have been closed off to me had I been set on, say, working a finance job after college.
100%. Yeah, it's that tent number 5, orient your decisions around leverage, freedom, and alignment. So you had that goal, that vision of freedom, and then, you start just kind of throw energy, and you got lucky in that sense to find that, but it's because you were thinking about it and you were putting your energy out there in all these different directions. I think one thing that you actually told me when we first met, November 2023, so this is like a year and a half ago when I was getting into the game. I think this is super important is you have to get into the arena. And I don't know if this is a tenant on here, but did you
It should
want to
be.
talk a bit about that? Because I think for me, that was like the single act of courage, get into the arena to just like start posting. I joined a cohort, and then 18 months later, we're co-hosting this together. So
That's how
it's
it goes.
interesting how that works. And he would be like, "Oh, you got lucky," But maybe let's talk about that point, getting in the
Yes.
arena.
Yeah, and even the same thing that's happening for you right now happened to me as well. Of I was in the arena, I was making a lot of energy, making a lot of noise, meeting a lot of people, joining cohorts, and I end up getting a quote unquote lucky opportunity working for Dan Coe and Cortex. Now, I couldn't have predicted that at the start, but by being in the arena and taking action every day, I gained the specific knowledge, the awareness, and the connections to that opportunity becoming even possible. And so, to zoom back out to this arena point, if you've ever played sports, you'll understand this. When you're on the field playing any sport, or even if you go to a professional sports game, you'll see this. People from the stands are always shouting. They always think they know what to do. Oh, he should have thrown the ball to that guy. Oh, dude, you're an idiot. How did you miss that shot? But when you're in the arena, you know that those people in the stands have no idea what it's like to be in the arena playing the game. Another example would be somebody in the stands could say, "Oh, he should have passed the ball that way. He should have made that shot. He should have dunked there instead of laid the ball up." But that person, if you put them in the arena on the court, would have no idea how to do that thing. You can only learn how to play any game by being in the arena and playing it. That is the
Yeah,
only way specific knowledge is built.
I think this is a huge point with the creator game is this kind of sidelines paralysis. This is where I was for a little while. I first came across Danco summer 2022, and I probably knew a fair amount about the game. I knew some of the principles, but the thing was, I was just paralyzed on the sidelines, and I only really started to understand the game once I was in the game and posting and trying to make moves and throwing out energy, and that's kind of what led to getting lucky in some ways. So I think this is a huge point, just to get off the sidelines, and only once you're off the sidelines does the journey begin. So just it's that single act of courage, but it's so important.
Yeah, and it's the single act of courage to get in the arena, and then it's the continuous act of courage to stay in. If and I said this to myself from the beginning, if I do not quit, I cannot lose. I only lose if I quit. If you stay in the game for long enough, you will eventually find a role in that game. You'll find a unique positioning where you will become successful.
Yep. Steve Jobs quote comes to mind. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. This, I think, is a big part of luck surface area. Throw your energy out there in all these different directions, and it will connect in this way you probably couldn't have foreseen looking from the sidelines, but it does happen.
Yes.
Any last thoughts on this tenant number 6, or do you want to jump to tenant number 7?
Yeah, 7 and 8 are quite similar. So maybe we just read them out and then kind of add any nuanced thoughts, but they kind of expand on everything we talked about in point 6.
Do you want to go ahead and read number 7 and 8 there? I can maybe ask any questions if anything comes up for me.
Sure. Tenant number 7 is the number one way to expand your luck surface area is through friendships and community. Number 8 is networking and making friends across niches exponentially expands your luck surface area and your ability to tap into the network effect.
Okay, I have one thought here. Just to sum up, how do you contrast traditional LinkedIn networking versus friendships and community, and this kind of your take on networking? And perhaps as a follow-up, like how would you maybe advise someone to get started here?
So I would delineate LinkedIn networking versus we could call it creator networking or just like human networking
Friendship even?
by
Yeah.
yeah, friendship, right? And that's why I don't even love the word networking. It feels like a chore, it feels transactional. But you can identify this in like a party. Let's say you go to a party. Okay, there are certain people there that are only playing the status game. They only want to be friends with you if you're friends with them and you have a lot of status. You can tell when things are transactional right away. I saw this great tweet last week by George Mack, and he said, when someone asks you what you do for work, like right away, you have identified a transactional player. You've
Mm.
identified somebody that's only playing a status game. So my advice would be don't only think about what can this person do for me. Approach every person you meet on the internet as if you were meeting them with a fresh set of eyes at a party and you had no idea who they were and you were genuinely curious about them as a person, who they are rather than what they do on the surface. And when you can really drop in with somebody and show, like, I'm not just here to fucking business connect, bro. I'm here to actually know who you are. You create a really genuine friendship that will last years and years and years versus just a transactional outreach DM. Like these people that DM me on Instagram and Twitter, like trying to sell me on their service. Okay, the service might be cool. I don't know. It could be. I instantly kind of write them off in my mind as like even maybe being friends with them. Whereas somebody who just DMs me like, bro, like your stuff's cool, like I resonate with your energy, I watched this thing from you. That creates a much different dynamic where like I'm going to be more inclined to not only respond, but I'm also going to be inclined to like help this person out in some way and become friends with them and then build a relationship that can last for years. So again, you have to know like how am I playing the game? Am I only playing the game for business success? Fine, maybe then you approach it purely from a LinkedIn networking perspective. But if you're playing the game to build online community, find your tribe of people, connect with people around the world, build lifelong friends, meet them in person, live with them, all that stuff that can happen, approach it as if you were just meeting somebody at a party.
I think a huge part of this, which you touched on, is this like curiosity thing, because with creator networking, like how I tend to approach meeting new people is like, if I just think someone is doing something really cool, that's a really good person to meet. Because you already instantly have something to talk about, and you genuinely find what they're doing interesting. I think this is just like the go towards the curiosity, what the people that are doing exciting stuff that's really interesting to you. And this is something that doesn't exist as much in LinkedIn networking. Like when I was in business school, I used to do networking events for consulting. You meet a consultant, it's 100% transactional, and this is kind of the unless you're really into consulting, which some people were, really into mental models and so on. But there's less curiosity in LinkedIn networking because inherently the roles are more linear and you know say what you want about it. You know, it's a job. But in the creator game, people are doing cool stuff. Like there's a guy making an AI, I don't know, AI and breathing or something, and you love breathwork, and you're like, yo, that's so cool. He's like applying to AI. Like people are doing cool stuff. And if someone's doing something really cool, they'll definitely love to talk to you more about it. And if you do that enough times, maybe just meet that person, but they know someone once you're actually friends who's doing XYZ. It's not even. This is the thing about network. You have to get past the connotation of networking in the LinkedIn world and get to the network. Like actually visualize a spider's web or something, and each person is a little point on that spider web with all the lines connecting them. Everybody
Hmm.
knows 5 people pretty well, or at least in the creator game, most people will know a few people once they're established here doing cool stuff, and just make friends based on that curiosity, and cool things can happen. Again, it's just a luck surface there. I think when you overthink it rather than just go where the energy is and throw a bunch of things to the wall, that's where if you follow the energy and just throwing things to the wall, magic happens. That's the luck surface area. I think this is for the networking thing. Any other ideas around that, or these points 7 and 8?
Yeah, I think that the spider web analogy is really valuable, and it actually touches on the last part of number 8, which is tapping into the network effect. And so, if you imagine the spider web of people that are all connected around the internet, you want to be at the center point of that web. You want to be somebody who can connect people, somebody that connections happen through, somebody that business deals happen through. And you do that by tapping into a broad, multi-dimensional network. So let's go back to the original example of I'm only an email marketer. You're siphoning yourself to a very narrow part of that spider web. Whereas if you broaden out to what you're actually curious about, whatever it is, fitness, psychology, personal development, spirituality, and you are open to connecting with people from all around those domains, your spider web goes from just like one little corner that's kind of isolated to now being able to tap into the entire spider web of the internet. And so this is so powerful because say you put out a tweet that's really good, that's kind of broad, that resonates with a lot of people on a broad topic like mindset or like self development. Not only are people that are into that self development sphere only going to retweet it or like it or share it, but people from all the spheres will be able to like it and retweet it. And so now you get a retweet from a copywriter. Now that copywriter has a whole network of other copywriters and marketers who are going to discover your stuff. The same thing happens in the domain of health. A few health bros comment or retweet your stuff, and now you're exposed to the entire health niche and health sphere. And you do that for spirituality, you do it for esoteric stuff like astrology or whatever it is, and you really tap into the entire internet, and eventually everybody kind of knows who you are. And this is also where a podcast can become really valuable for expanding your interest, because if you run a podcast and you're just going off your curiosity, not only are you going to learn a lot, not only are you going to make a lot of great connections, but you're going to tap into these cross-disciplinary connections where you can do a podcaster with a health and fitness guy one day, you do a podcast with a marketer the next day, and you do a podcast with a manifestation and spiritual guy the next day. And now, not only are you adding these branches of knowledge to your own repertoire, but 10 people that listen to the health podcast now follow you. 10 people that listen to the marketing podcast now follow you. 10 people that listen to the spirituality podcast now follow you. And you're building a larger and larger and broader network.
Yeah, so just building on that point, you have here tenant 9. You are only 1 to 3 connections away from anyone in the entire world.
Yeah, so this is the power of the internet and the power of deciding to start creating on it rather than just consuming. So before you begin creating, you see these creators, these influencers, these entrepreneurs, these big brands and businesses, and they seem kind of unreachable and untouchable. It's like, oh, that's Hamza, that's Andrew Tate, that's Dan Coe, that's Jordan Peterson, whoever it is, and you put them on this massive pedestal as if they're unreachable. But once you step into the arena, begin making connections, start talking to people, stay in the game for long enough time, you realize that at a certain point, especially when you have your own brand and influence built, really nobody is unreachable. So, and this can happen in a relatively short time span, even if you have very little prior experience or skills. And so, again, I'll give a personal example here. But like, I started off in the creator economy online writing game as a 20-year-old in college with absolutely no skills. Like, I could write a little bit just like naturally, and I've enjoyed it. And I knew a little bit about personal development and health, but I really knew nothing and I knew nobody. And within the span of a few years, I've worked with, like, directly with and met and sat alongside people I had looked up to for a long time, like Aubrey Marcus or like Dan Coe. And even some of these people that I looked up to in the beginning of the game, I've become really good friends with, like names like Danny Miranda, Nick Sweeney, who maybe you don't know yet, but you will definitely someday. And what I've realized is that me as a 20-year-old college kid with no skills, just by taking action and putting myself out there and networking and meeting people and becoming friends with them and taking leaps of faith to go meet people in person, join communities, I've built this brand where now I can connect with nearly anybody. And even today, it happened where one of my favorite authors, named Frederick Dotson, who's written 55 plus books, very popular author, I just sent him an email and boom, we hopped on a podcast. And so the internet just really breaks down all these barriers of separation between people. Like, I know people that are one connection away from Andrew Tate. I know people that are a few connections away from Donald Trump. And, if I really, really wanted to, maybe I could get into those conversations in those circles. Like, we probably know people that know Naval Ravikant. So yeah, the barrier between meeting the people that you look up to is actually much lower than you think, but you can never truly experience it until, again, you go into the arena.
Yeah, 100%. I think I've definitely experienced this as well. Like starting out, when you're on the sidelines, it's very easy to put people in the game on a pedestal or imagine the game as this vast thing with so many players. But once you're in the game, you start to see there's actually a lot less people in the game than you might think that actually, stay in the game. Do you want to talk a bit about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of people drop off or quit within the first 6 to 12 months. That's for sure true because based on everybody I started with, if I look around, not that many people remain. And I think you hit it on the head with saying there's not as many people in the game as you think. The space is not as saturated as you think. It's amplified because, of course, you go on social media and you see all these different creators. It feels like there's millions, and there might be millions, but there are not millions within your niche pocket of interests. There's probably not as many as you think. Honestly, like, I have a lot of friends in quote unquote normal life who have a little bit of fitness knowledge, health and fitness knowledge. They understand macronutrients, they understand micronutrients, they understand calories, protein, workouts, etc. And to them, the online fitness space probably looks really saturated. But if they had a strategy and they had the right connections and they started taking action, they could become one of the most known and prominent fitness creators in the Twitter space, for example, probably within 6 to 12 months of consistency. There really are, like, let's just use this example because I've worked with these people a lot and it's easy to grasp. Fitness creators on Twitter who make a living helping other people lose weight and build muscle. It looks like there's probably thousands and millions of these people, but in reality, all of those clients congregate towards maybe 50 to 100 people. And so
Yeah,
there's really not that much competition out there. Most of the competition either tries for a day and quit or never have the courage to start. And just so by starting and then by staying, it's a trite platitude, but you are literally separating yourself from 99% of people.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I saw this for myself. I think this is probably what you're alluding to is like in the fitness space, for example, on the timeline or whatever, it looks like there could be so many of these people at this high level. But I found when I was actually looking for copywriting work, this was like one of my niches I was looking at. And you start actually mapping out behind the scenes, okay, like how many of these people are there that I can talk to? And you look at it and you're, from the perspective of someone looking to sell a service, it's kind of disappointing because you actually realize there's so few people actually in the game. So I think it's a good point that from the sidelines, it looks like there's so many people in the game. But once you're in the game, you start to realize that it's A, smaller, and B, everyone seems to kind of know each other. So if you can just make a couple good connections, I think it really opens up your world.
Yeah, and one more point to touch on this is another example is I recently had a client named Zach Scannapieco, and he had been kind of on the sidelines working for other creators for many years, and he decided to take the leap and become his own autonomous creator and performance coach, energy coach, essentially. And so he's been posting consistently on LinkedIn for about a month about performance content. Within this first month, there was a list that came out of the top 10 performance creators on the internet, and he got in the top 10 list, and he started a month ago. And it just goes to show like there's so many people out there with this knowledge that just aren't creating that could burst onto the scene and generate some type of traction pretty fast.
Question for you. What do you think is the most exciting thing about this? Everyone's 1 to 3 connections away from you.
It probably ties into the next point, which maybe we can just touch on is point 10, principle 10 is your mentors are just as human as you. Avoid pedestalization and idealization. And so to touch on your question of what's exciting is that you can become just like the people you look up to. And not only can you become like them and live a life like them, but you can become friends with them. And in terms of like friendships and social circles, I still have friends from my past life, not literally my past life, but my lifetime here before I got into this stuff. And great people. I'll remain friends with them likely until the day I die. But the type of friends that I've made through the internet who are so similar to me and on a similar mission and devoted to the path of their highest self and creating the life they want and serving humanity, those people have really become my new tribe, my social circle, my tribe through the internet. And then the added benefit of that is you go meet them in person and maybe you move to a city with them, you move to a different country and you lock into a house together for a few months and build. So not only does it open up opportunities for you to change your life, not only can you actually become like the people you look up to, but the actual in-person aspect of it, of meeting these people, becoming genuine friends with them, it's like you're attracting and finding your soul tribe through the internet. Like because you're putting out a unique frequency, you are going to resonate with other people at that same frequency or energy. Whereas in real life, you're kind of limited to where you were born or where you went to school. But on the internet, all those barriers break down, and you can find people where I never would have, one, thought I'd be into all this esoteric knowledge, but two, I didn't know that there'd be so many people out there who I could talk with. Like, Will, you and I had a conversation the other day that's been in my head of most people when they see each other, they talk about the weather, they talk about the sports game, whatever the latest thing is. Me and you hop on the call, we start talking about like what chakras feel most aligned in us. Like, are we getting psychic attacks from other
Yeah,
people?
in like the same way normal people talk about the weather. Yeah, like it's
Same
just like
tone.
business as usual. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
amazing.
And since that interaction, it's kind of funny. I've had a number of interactions at the gym and with different people. The first thing people talk about is the weather. Oh, it's such a nice day. Oh, I think it's going to rain later. And I just like, I kind of play along, of course, but I think back to our conversation about, dang, the things we talk about are really interesting. They really matter. And I wouldn't have been able to have these conversations with people like you and my other friends on the internet had I not put myself out there.
I think that's the meta point of these last few tenants. We're talking about networking, we're talking about connections, mentors. The internet is just a portal to meet those people that share the same interests as you, care about the same things, you have the same values. I think that is one of the most potent things. I'll reflect same as you. That's what's really changed my life. It's kind of cliche, but to actually find these people who are really creative, who really care about these topics. They care about business, but they also might care about some spiritual topics. You can talk about all that. And what are the odds that someone down the road is talking about the same thing or thinking about the same thing? Maybe they are, but I find the internet is a good way to connect these niche interests. And then, yeah, the magic is when you do meet up in person. And I think that's a really cool thing in the creator game is actually that in-person aspect that flows from the online kind of metaverse, if you will, of knowing people through these chats and calls and things like this.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately what we're building towards. It's like we're building online community to then bring that online community in person, and that is beyond magical.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, your mentors are just as human as you. It's very true. I mean, when I was starting out, I was on the sidelines, and I jumped in the game, and you do initially kind of start to in the initial stages, you will tend to put people who have the success on a pedestal. But then when you start to meet people, you start to realize that everyone's just human like you. And I think a big part with this mentor step is like, if someone has done this, you can too. That's the thing about all these internet creations and this creator economy is like everything is doable. And as soon as you realize that anyone who you look up to is just like you, they've just kind of done the steps, then the whole world kind of opens up.
Precisely. And it's not to say that mentorships are not valuable. They are. I've had a number of incredibly valuable mentorships along the way, but the people you're looking up to, they're just other humans that have found a way. And not only does that give you a confidence that I can do it too, but by taking them off of a pedestal, you subconsciously put yourself on the same level as them. Anytime you are putting somebody on a pedestal in your mind, subconsciously, what's also happening at a subtle energetic level is you're putting yourself down and you have to look up to them. And you say, I'm not like them. I'm not as good as them, right? They don't have the same flaws and insecurities as me, which is not true. Every human experiences all human emotions. Every human is capable of thinking any thought that any other human has thought. And so, with many of these mentors that I've idolized, when you idolize somebody, you don't really see them. But when you really see them as another human being, you see every part of them. You see that the person who has a million followers is actually like kind of insecure. And that's kind of a wild realization. And it invites compassion and empathy for them, but it also invites a recognition and an awareness that just because you present on the surface to be incredibly successful, everybody is still dealing with their own things beneath the surface.
Yes. Yeah. I think I think it's a great point. And I was curious if you had any more thoughts around this tenant number 10. Your mentors are just as human as you. Avoid pedestalization, idolization. If you want to jump on over to number 11.
Yeah, last thought is that, people are vibrating at different frequencies. They're playing the game from different levels of consciousness. They might have unique skills and genius. And by getting into proximity with those people, you kind of absorb their frequency at a subconscious subtle level. Like we are creatures of imitation. We learn through subtle behaviors and osmosis. And so many of the things that I've learned from mentors have not been the words they've told me or the tactics they've taught me, but the energy that they move with, the frequency that they embody, who they're being. And that's the most valuable part of meeting these type of mentors is, okay, I see that they're as human as me eventually, once I see through the illusions of the pedestal that I put them on. And then what can I learn from them about how they operate and show up in the world? What is their energy like? What's their confidence like? What's their aura like? And then that naturally, because we absorb those who we are most around, becomes part of your own energy and frequency. And you can experience this even through listening to a podcast. You are absorbing the frequency of that who you listen to. It just amplifies when you're actually with them in person and in conversation.
100%. I think my life changed when I really started to make these connections online with people who were at this level that I was moving towards, and just through imitation, being around them, it really accelerates you in that direction. I think there's a meta point there to be made about environment, the content you're watching, and who you're talking to on a daily basis has a profound impact.
Most definitely.
Tenant number 11. All actions are downstream of your self-image and your frequency. Elevating your state of consciousness should be your number one priority.
Yes. So here's where we move into a little bit of the more metaphysical, spiritual side of all of these discussions. And it kind of ties into what we said on the last point about frequency. The meta point here is that whoever you believe yourself to be is exactly how you will act. And if you want to find out who you actually believe yourself to be, observe your actions as if you were looking at another person. Okay, we have these idealizations in our own mind about who we could be or who we are, but when we look at ourselves objectively from the outside, we get a very clear view into who we really are. And so, if we know that our actions are downstream of our frequency and how we see ourselves, which is our level of consciousness and our self image, then instead of looking to only change the actions on the surface, like I'm going to write this many tweets, I'm going to record this many podcasts, I'm going to build this project. Those things are fine, but unless you change and upgrade the internal vibratory state of who you're being, those actions will eventually fade away. And so if you want to change your actions, don't focus only on the actions, focus on upgrading yourself internally by elevating your rate of vibration or your state of consciousness, and that will infuse everything you do externally. And so the interesting paradox here is like when you get into the game and you might not know about these concepts, you see somebody that's really, really successful and you just see their actions. But in reality, it is the energy that they're embodying, their state of consciousness that infuses all of their actions. And so that should really become the number one priority to quote unquote work on. And then the work externally naturally flows from the new vibrational state.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think one thing maybe I'll prompt you a bit further is how would this look practically? What would be an example of, say, an average, self-image frequency, just, and then what would it look like to really step into this elevation, and how would that
Mhm.
affect the actions?
Yeah, so there's certain things that will naturally expand your consciousness. I read from David Hawkins in his book, The Maps of Consciousness, that even being exposed to the map of consciousness naturally raises one's level of consciousness by, I think it was 20 points or something along those lines. And so reading spiritual texts will raise your consciousness. Um, Going and traveling the world and experiencing new things will expand and raise your state of consciousness. Medicine work or psychedelics can expand your state of consciousness, although you have to integrate that back into daily life. Now, another thing that you can think about with elevating your consciousness, after you take an objective look at yourself right now, as you currently are in your current reality, and feel what that feels like, then you go in your imagination to a higher version of yourself in a higher timeline, in a higher reality. And you imagine yourself in that reality, doing what you love, being where you want, being around people who love you, and doing exactly what your soul wants to do every single day. And you imagine what that feels like in the now. And then as you practice embodying that higher rate of vibration, higher feeling in the day to day life, your consciousness is raising to match the imagined state of consciousness in your imagination.
Powerful, powerful. I think. I mean, that floored me. I mean,
I
that's
did kind of I did kind of
10 and
cut it off
11.
there. I did cut it off there, like, kind of abruptly, but I felt like there was
Yeah.
nothing to say. But I guess to finish off the point, anything that you would classify as inner work, meditation, breath work, journaling, sitting with yourself, doing, sound healing, doing quantum healing, these type of things, anything you'd classify under the bucket of really working on yourself will elevate your state of consciousness.
Yes. And I think, in a more practical sense as well, when you do these things, the actions you do will be easier in a way because as you are in this higher state, you have more energy, things are flowing better, they can be more enjoyable. I think that's a very practical thing. Is all the actions you need to do become a bit more effortless. There's more flow there. And on another note, when you're really embodying the type of person you want to be now and that frequency, I think you start to act with more intention so that your actions have more leverage. You know, an example would be you do things in way A, where it takes you 20 hours. If you just relax a bit, meditate, you kind of already know the thing's done. Your self image is aligned with what you're trying to do. You can say, oh, I don't have to do the thing that's going to take 20 hours, option A. I can do option B. That's going to take me 2 hours. And it's just doing the thing that takes 2 hours. And I know this person that I can talk to that'll set me up and, that will achieve the same outcome. So
Correct.
this is
Yeah.
really a meta point here, but it is the whole game. I can attest to that. And I think it also, unless you want to add something there, but I was thinking it links to tenant number 12 as well.
Yeah, I'll give one final thought, and I love the point you brought up, and it brings another idea in my mind that when you are vibrating at a higher state of consciousness and embodying a higher state of being, and look at the map of consciousness if you want to get a reference for what we're talking about here, you literally see a reality that you could not see before. Einstein has a great quote, which I think about often, and he says, no problem can be solved from the same level of mind that created it. In other words, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. And so, another analogy that I could use is imagine that an ant wants to cross a river. Its consciousness is very low and very limited. And so, it can't think strategically, it can't see other solutions, right? The human being that sees the ant can say to the ant, in this theoretical example, oh, there's another bridge 100 yards down you could just walk to and then you could cross. Or, oh, the wind is going to blow this way at this time, then you could cross then. Or, oh, there's a log that you can hop on, or you can wait for an animal to hop on their back and then cross the river. All of those solutions are incomprehensible and unseeable to the ant who is at a lower level of consciousness. But to the human being who has a higher level of consciousness, he can see solutions to the problem that the ant couldn't see. And so, in the same way, whatever problems are manifesting in your life right now can be solved by elevating your level of consciousness and seeing the problem in a way that you could not currently see in your limited perspective right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just to cap off this point, if you're of my upbringing was more like rational, scientific. But the funny thing is that people like Tesla, people like Einstein, they were talking about this stuff. They were really into this stuff, and it led to a lot of their discoveries. So um, I think this is really powerful stuff here. Any other thoughts there?
Nothing other than that our aim is to bring those ideas from Einstein, Tesla, spiritual teachers into practical business creator economy situations. That is what we're trying to do here.
And on that note, tenet number 12, all business growth is directly correlated to personal and spiritual growth. There is no such thing as compartmentalization.
Yes. We oftentimes compartmentalize things into different buckets. Okay, this activity is spiritual. This activity is not spiritual. This activity is for personal development. This activity is not. But in reality, our minds like to compartmentalize things and organize things and separate things so that they can make rational sense of them. But in reality, in nature, there's no separation. In nature, there's no border between the US and Canada, there's just land. In reality, there's no separation between a business action and a spiritual action. Every single action is just what it is. We just put different labels on them. And so oftentimes the question comes up like, how can I grow in business while also growing spiritually? Or how can I grow in business while not sacrificing my spiritual growth? But it's looking at the question wrong. because in reality, there's no separation of the two. Every action you take in business is a spiritual action. It just depends on if you're conscious of it or not. And when you operate from the paradigm of every single thing I do in my entire life is a spiritual action, is an act of devotion, is an act of presence, then the business will probably transform in some way to reflect that perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a point here to be made that your business as a creator, the outcomes are tied to who you are, right? This is a big thing with the creator economy. This is a big thing with leverage.
Yes. And in this evolving economy, creator economy, which I believe is going to really evolve into the consciousness economy, where brands and businesses are being built for the elevation of human consciousness and the betterment of the human species. Those who will succeed the most in the coming years will be those with a consciousness oriented perspective. You can already see it a little bit now. Like, let's use Solbra for the example. If you guys want to look them up and you're listening, Solbrah. Okay. There's a lot of companies out there that sell soap. There's a lot of companies out there that sell shorts. Why do certain people buy all of Solbra's stuff and not Nike stuff or not Dove's soap? Because Solbra's business, which is an extension of his internal consciousness or rate of vibration, which from my outside viewpoint seems pretty high, is done for the betterment of humanity. The shorts he is making is not for only for profit, even though it is. That's how he sustains himself, and he's pretty successful at it. But they're made because they're 100% cotton. They're not giving you skin issues with polyester. They're not destroying your genitalia, etc. Not to get too graphic. Or the soap, right? The soap that most people buy from the old paradigm is done for the sake of profit and commercialization and getting as many bottles of soap into people's hands as possible. And so they put synthetic ingredients that are cheap in there, which are not good for people. But Solbra makes his own soap with olive oil and like honey. And I have his soap literally right now, like in my bathroom. And I buy it because I know it's elevating my frequency. And so to the people who are new to this game, that stuff seems quite esoteric. But as more people wake up and more people raise their rate of consciousness, which is happening more rapidly than ever before in documented human history because of the internet, and just people are ready, humanity's ready for an awakening, the people who will awaken to these truths, they'll start to not buy Nike shorts and they'll start to buy cotton shorts. They'll start to not buy Dove synthetic soap and they'll buy organic olive oil soap from creators who are putting out their unique frequency and morals and intentions into their products.
Yeah, I think there's a meta point there about power versus force, and as you that's a Dr. David Hawkins book. But the idea there is as you kind of level up personally and spiritually, your actions and your business dealings are more aligned with power, and therefore you get more leverage. Versus, if you were to just try to force your business and force outcomes, you're always going to be constrained to that level. Uh, Even see myself, some of the copywriters I looked up to from the 70s and 80s and stuff, a different time of copywriting when they were pretty cool. Those guys were pretty spiritual in some ways, and they were all about personal growth and exploring life, and that's what led to them doing great writing that really uh, made them so much money. So there's a huge connect here. And is there anything else you wanted to add to this tenant?
The last point is that I've put out this tweet before. It's if you want to align yourself with the future of work, align yourself with where the consciousness of humanity is going. And so, if you look into any studies, you look into any esoteric knowledge, astrological knowledge, spiritual teachers, we can see that this awakening of human consciousness is happening. And so, if you can position yourself there ahead of where the masses are currently, eventually their level of consciousness will catch up to your frequency and your product, and you'll be positioned as an early adopter and a leader in this newly emerging consciousness economy. So position yourself and your business ahead of where the world is heading, which in our estimation is towards higher levels of consciousness and individual freedom and personal autonomy. Position yourself there and wait for the people to come.
Yeah, perfect. Tenant number 13. If you wouldn't let them date your sister, don't do business with them. This
This
is a
is a
funny
funny
one.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a funny one. So, where this one comes from is that you can really get a good read on people at a deeper energetic level by how you would feel if they were going to become a part of your family. So, you have potential business partners out there who are like, damn, like I might be able to make a lot of money with them. They're pretty powerful, they're pretty influential. But if you come back to the heuristic of would I let them date my sister? Would I want them to marry my brother if it's the other way around or whatever it is? You can get a pretty good gauge on somebody's moral character and integrity from that heuristic. And so I have had business partners in the past who I have followed the first heuristic of, damn, this person's powerful. I can make a lot of money with them, but they wouldn't have passed that test of dating my sister, for example. And so, what happens with those relationships inevitably in the long run? Some type of trust is broken, some type of disagreement happens, some type of lack of integrity comes forth, and we no longer are business partners or really even that good of friends beyond it. But the people who I'm building long term with, I can say with 100% confidence, like if they wanted to date my sister, I would be okay with it because I feel their moral integrity and standards, and that will transfer not only into our business relationship together, but into every single aspect of the business.
Yeah, so there's a big point there about integrity and being intentional about who you do business with.
Exactly. It's very important who you decide to partner with.
Yeah, and I think there's also a point here about how when you do business, yes, it's 100% about what you're doing, but it's also about who it's with. I've definitely found that when you build things with your friends, it's 10 times more fun. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure, yeah, and I can expand on it to a little bit more of a meta point of like you can kind of just identify within people, like if they got it or if they don't. It's kind of like an intangible. You can just feel it from their energy. You can see it in their actions. And so, even if the person is young, even if it's early, even if they haven't proven a lot yet, by taking note of their actions and just observing their energy, you can see like, damn, this person, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to be successful in 10, 20, 30 years. And I feel that very strongly with all of my close friends in this online business sphere. Maybe they haven't figured it out quite yet, but inevitably, because of the character that I see them coming from and the energy I see them put into their work and their devotion to actualizing themselves and showing up every single day to take action towards their potential, I know in the long run it's going to click together. And those are the people that I want to partner with.
Yeah, so you're looking at the more energetic frequency level, kind of going back to the last few tenants.
Yeah, it's like if somebody's avoiding my text for weeks on end, I don't see something that's going to mature into a very good business relationship. If somebody is quick responsive, high energy, um, gives unique insights, can also laugh and make a joke, like those are the intangibles that I really love to see because I know in the long run, that type of person is inevitably going to get where they need to go.
100%. 100%. Yeah, so like a long-term game. Long-term game. It's kind of where you're hitting at as well.
Yes.
All right. Do we want to move to tenant number 14?
Yes.
Okay. Tenant number 14. You will acquire the most specific knowledge by taking action first and researching solutions via niche curriculums, large language models, and outside knowledge second.
So this is again building on an original idea from Naval Ravikant around specific knowledge, but it's so important, it's worth mentioning again. Specific knowledge, like the analogy we used earlier about you can only really know how to shoot a basketball by being on the court and playing it, or you can only learn how to ride a bike by doing it yourself rather than looking on the outside and seeing people do it. You have to do the thing yourself. You have to write the post yourself. You have to build the website yourself. You have to run the marketing sequence to the product you created yourself to gain the specific knowledge of the nuances of how to actually do the thing. Now, this is going to become more apparent and more important, I think, in the next handful of years, with especially with AI. A lot of people are outsourcing their personal power to AI, but what they're missing is they're missing the subtle, nuanced, that can't be taught type of skills and knowledge that can only be learned by doing. Right? I can make a YouTube video about personal identity and give good points about frequency and weave in my own personal story, but I only know how to do that at a high level by doing it myself. I could just tell the AI, hey, make a video for me about frequency and energy and tell a story, but it's not going to capture the audience because there isn't a specific knowledge of tone of voice, of setting up a story, of infusing little subtle humor, right? Those things can't be taught. They can only be learned by doing it. And so a lot of people also get caught in a trap of learning. They're like, I need to learn more before I take action. I need to do another course. I need to sign up for another cohort. I need to sign up for another thing, and then I'll act. When in reality, the people who get the furthest, the fastest are the ones that act first and look to outside knowledge second. They look at outside knowledge as an amplifier of the action they're taking rather than if I just read this book, if I just take this course, then I'm going to be ready to do the thing. No, you do the thing first. And then when you get stuck, you either find the solution yourself or then you ask AI. You look at the curriculum, you look at a book.
100%. 100%. I mean, I saw this a lot in the world of marketing where people would be like, hey, have you heard of this? What this guy thinks in this course, or this guy in this course? Have you seen this book? And uh, my approach is more just like, I'm going to just do one course, just study inside and out. And then anything else I need to know, I can just look up. But you got to get in the game. And then you can kind of start asking those questions. I really like that point.
Yeah, and to build on that, the people who I've seen make the most progress are the ones that just take relentless action. I think something I've heard from a lot of creators and entrepreneurs is that oftentimes they'll join a program, they'll sign up for coaching, they'll buy a course. They won't even look at the course, but just the action of buying the course then was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to act now. And it's happened to me many times. I'll join a cohort, I show up to the first call, my energy starts to take me elsewhere, and I'm like, damn, I'm in this cohort, but I don't feel like looking at the curriculum. I don't feel like showing up to the calls. I'm just going to take relentless action. And then if I need to, or if I feel inspired to, then I'll look at the curriculum later. And that has led to a lot of rapid progress faster than I would say most who want to just absorb and learn more and more curriculums and more courses. Like I know a lot of people that they have like 15 to 20 individual courses, but like they haven't found their path yet. Whereas I've probably taken 2 or 3 courses and I've bought a handful of others, but I haven't even looked at them. But because I've acted more than I've learned, and I've learned more because I've acted, I've made more rapid progress in certain domains.
There's a meta point here, maybe around perfectionism. How would you, how did you get over this kind of perfectionism, or was it just kind of a natural inclination just to take that action?
Yeah, what's coming to mind is like you have to just let the old self and even the body mind do its thing and like run its course while you know from the perspective of your higher self that you're taking the right action. So to bring this practically down to earth, the first time I ever was going to send a tweet out, my body was freaking out. I wasn't tapped into my body awareness at the time, but even looking back, my body was naturally freaking out. I was cringing. I was super anxious. I was sweating. I took 10 minutes to press post, and when I pressed post, my whole body, like, spasmed, and I threw my phone across the room. And that is really what most people are avoiding.
Holy.
It's like this really uncomfortable feeling of going beyond the known confines of the ego and of the personal identity. So, can you act from your higher self knowing, "Okay, this website kind of cringe. This post, it's gonna make me cringe, but I know if I put it out, it is gonna lead me on a path that is a much higher timeline and trajectory." And can you let your body just process the old stored emotions, the insecurities naturally by letting yourself go through it and holding deeper awareness of who you truly are and that you're gonna be okay. And after a long enough time, now I post a tweet and I don't think about it. But at first it was terrifying.
I love the perspective of cringe maxing in
Yes.
the first few months. Like that's the solve for perfectionism is you just take an action and then it sucks and you take another one and maybe everyone's laughing at you in your head. No one actually cares. And then you just get better. But yeah, I think this taking action, like that step of courage, it's difficult, but it is in the long run much better than these endless solution searching preparations. It can really get you stuck, and I've been there. But cringe maxing,
Cringe maxing. And that's why this is such a spiritual journey because what appears on the surface as somebody who begins to make content, they're actually doing so much internal work to transcend the opinions of others. That's really what it is. Like, can you get beyond the need for others' validation and create from your own heart and your own intrinsic spirit and motivation? That in itself is a spiritual action.
yes. I love the quote, "The man in the arena." You ever heard that one by I think it was Timothy Roosevelt. I'm probably
Yes.
butchering that, but it's like the man in the arena. He stutters around, he fails, but the point is like the people cheering at him. Like at least he's the man in the arena, and he's moving towards his purpose. And I think there's once you can start to kind of align to your own approval, take that action and just cringe max, you're gonna get where you want to go. And that's where the knowledge comes from really and the success. Any more points on this tenet number 14?
I love that quote. And the last point is you have to become okay with cringing at yourself to get to where you want to go. It still happens. I still put posts on my Instagram story that I know my high school friends are looking at, and it makes me cringe. It's like, fuck, dude. Like these people are all seeing me talk about all this crazy stuff. But eventually you get to a point where you just simply don't care anymore. And that's freedom. And that's when you can give your fullest gift to the world.
Yeah, the highest game. Highest game. Tenet number 15. Avoid excessive self-labeling. Every time you speak a narrow label over yourself, you limit your long-term potential.
Yeah, so this one again ties into the idea of, like we talked about earlier, of labeling yourself as an email marketer, a copywriter, right? These self-limiting labels that, they give you a sense of status, they give you a sense of security, but they limit the range of who you could be. The truth is, you don't actually know who you could be. The only person that knows who you could be is your higher self who already exists in the future and God, you could say. And so the range of your potential could be so much broader than your narrow mind can ever believe. The range of your potential could lead you to becoming a guitarist, a DJ, a painter, a retreat host, a meditation guide. Like, who knows what the full range of your capacity as a spirit and as a human being could be? But when you box yourself into a label, any label, I'm a banker, I am a hippie, I am a traveler. Like every single label you put over yourself subconsciously closes off potential realities. Now there is a time and place to choose. Like this is what I am doing now, but can you choose to do something now while remembering that it's not the truth of who you really are? Because the truth of who you really are is an infinite, limitless being, is an infinite, limitless spirit that is just currently playing out this human game, but you are so much more than any label you could put over yourself.
Hmm. I think just to come back to tenet two, each skill you add doubles your odds of success. I think that's really tied into this how self labels and kind of narrowing yourself can actually be limiting, is because when you start to expand who you could be and think bigger picture, more skills, more intersections, that's where the magic happens. Yeah.
Yeah, how has that played out for you? How have you discovered a broader range of who you are and who you could be by continuously dropping previous labels?
Well, I can tell you that a big symptom of picking a label for yourself and seeing that as the be all end all, like for example, when I was at business school, oh, I'm going to be a consultant. It just makes the future seem a bit boring because these roles, people, the old world was like you pick a label and you're that for 40 years and that worked and that was fine. But I think in the new creator world, online world, I think people are gonna be switching what they're doing all the time, and I think they're gonna be able to combine all this stuff, and it's gonna be way more exciting. And like for me, like I jumped in the creator game, and what felt safe to me was to say, I'm gonna be a freelancer, I'm gonna be a copywriter. I know exactly what that's gonna look like, and my goals felt honestly a bit stale because I would just be like, well, in like 2 years, I'll just be doing this, but just making more money. And I think it was really sacrificing that creative side of myself that's always thinking a bit outside the box, trying to do new stuff, learn new things. And I think this is everyone's natural state to be a bit of a polymath. And then now it's like, okay, like I'm learning a bit of traffic. I'm doing some video editing because I actually like that. I used to do it as a kid. I'm still using the marketing, but in this new way. And by combining these skills, I'm creating something new that will ultimately be more successful and it's more fun. Um, and I'm here doing this podcast, and this is all part of the game and running a cohort. And there's this, I'm seeing now that there can be these different aspects to what you do, and you don't have to limit yourself to one label.
Correct. Yeah, it's like, if you told yourself 2 years ago when you're working a job, "I'm gonna be hosting a podcast, I'm gonna be co-hosting a men's retreat, I'm gonna be leading a cohort, I'm gonna be doing performance coaching," you wouldn't have been able to see that or know that because you had a limited label placed over yourself. But the point of your story and mine is very similar is that the excitement of life is in the unknown. It's in the, "Oh, could I do that? Oh, I could do that. I could be that." The excitement is not knowing the full extent of who you could be and continuously stretching your potential in various different ways to the point where, like, eventually you just become Will Mines. Like, "Oh, what does Will Mines do? I don't really know. He just does like all these random things." But you're just being yourself, and then you're serving the world with your unique gifts, and you're getting paid in proportion to how much you can serve the world.
I mean, yeah. And the thing is, in the broader context, this did not exist before. I think I still struggle to get my head around this, but 10 years ago, a lot of the things we're both doing and we see other people doing with AI, communities, retreats, social media content, this did not exist. This opportunity was not here 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, really. And this is the old world where you pick a label and you're a lawyer for your whole life. And then now it's totally different. So I think anywhere you have that unique interest, gift, skill you want to learn, do it. It can't hurt you at all.
Truth.
I think this leads to 10, number 16 you have down here. The only limits of your potential in this space are your open-mindedness, curiosity, and self-belief. This is a video game. You can really do anything.
Yeah, so we love talking about this video game analogy, like as if we're in GTA, as if we're in some virtual reality video game. And I mean, you can have your own opinions on like the simulation theory and all this stuff, but in reality, life is not that different than a video game. Business is not that different than a video game. You acquire different skills, you add different tools, you choose a character, you choose how to dress that character, you choose where that character goes and where you travel to and who you meet along the way. And so I love the video game frame because it kind of expands your mind on who you could be. If you were in a video game and you were controlling the player in that video game, and that player for 40 straight years did the same job in the same office, you probably wouldn't want to play that video game. But if you were playing that video game from the perspective that you are not the character, but you're the player behind it, you are the one who can choose what the character does and what he is exposed to. Maybe then at 22 years old, you're like, okay, this is a video game. Why not try to make some money in the online world? Why not go travel to this crazy place and just like see what happens and see what part of myself I discover? Why can't I acquire any skill if this is a video game? Why can't I become so multidimensional where I know how to write, I know how to podcast, I know how to speak, I know how to video edit, I know how to make websites, I know how to do anything I set my mind to, because any skill can be learned. Now, some people have natural proclivities towards certain skills and other people have proclivities towards other skills. But in this frame that this is a video game, you got to adopt the mindset that I can do anything I set my mind to. And from there, your potential really opens up. Your potential only closes off when you are doing the inverse of those three things we mentioned right now: open-mindedness, curiosity, self-belief. If you are close-minded, you're going to close off potential opportunities and potential realities. If you're not curious, and you're conformed into one way of being, you're not going to see new opportunities and new domains of thought present themselves to you and even meet new people. And if you don't have the self belief that if somebody else has done it, I can do it too, or adopting a belief that I can do anything, which is going to be the next tenet as well, if you don't adopt that belief, or if you do adopt that belief that I can't do that, it's just not for me, I could never be like that person, yeah, you're self-limiting yourself. So if you don't speak negative self-labels over yourself, you stay curious, you stay open, and you take action from the knowingness that if you continue to act from this place of genuine curiosity and openness, you can become that ideal character in the video game, living that dream life. It's all there, it's all possible for the taking.
Yeah. I mean, I really started to feel this like life's a video game thing, and when I moved out to Thailand for 5 months just recently. I think for anyone, if you go and live in a different country, it definitely starts to break apart your models of society in a way. Because when you move to a different country, no one knows you, so you kind of get this like blank slate in a way, and the culture's different, so it's not like what you're used to. Um, and it really starts to open up your perspective. It's like, yeah, this is just a bit like a video game, isn't it? Um, and that's from there, you start to be more open-minded, curious, and believe in yourself because all these previous labels and boxes kind of melt away. And I think what I'd say, Jack, is like what are practical ways to maybe step into this mindset, or like what's a basic step to start to kind of do all these things that really open up life?
Yeah, something I've done is evaluate yourself as if you were a character in a video game. Give yourself different ratings. Okay, at this scale, I'm this type of rating. At this scale, I'm this type of rating. Evaluate your life as if you were living in a movie or living in a video game. Would you want to be playing this video game? Would you want to be living in this movie? And if the answer is no, what would start to change to set you on a trajectory towards creating the video game or the movie or the reality that you'd want to live in? So it's like evaluate yourself objectively, look at your skills, look at your traits. What can you improve? What is already good? Who can you look up to and learn from? And then adopt that mindset that, if I'm the main character in a movie, what would the next scene be? What would the next chapter be? How could I maximize that chapter and make it the most exciting, interesting, and fun?
I love that. And I think just to add this video game thing, it really comes into play with internet freedom. Did you want to talk a bit about that, or Wi-Fi money, if you will?
Yeah, I think Wi-Fi money, internet money kind of breaks your paradigm on what's possible in the world. Like in a fundamental first principles sense, you can just type buttons on a computer and create the life you want. That's very fundamental first principles, but it is true. Like we're not going to war. We're hopefully we are typing buttons on a keyboard in our room playing an online video game. So we're literally playing an online video game that is online business and the creator economy to experience the full video game of life, which is essentially living the life that you want to live.
Yeah, so the 17th tenet you have here is the two most important beliefs to adopt are that if someone else has done it, I can do it too. And two, I can learn anything. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so this ties into a few of the previous points about not putting people on a pedestal and realizing your mentors are as human as you. And the archetypal energy that I like to think about here is the archetype of the wizard or the magician. And the wizard is that mystical being who can really do anything. And at the highest levels of modern entrepreneurship, what people are able to do is becoming more and more indistinguishable from wizardry. Like, I can hop onto a vibe coding software like Vercel, and as long as I have an idea, I can now build a website, I can build an email integration, I can build an email funnel, I can build a product. I can do this all very fast with attention and energy. And that rate of time or length of time between being able to do it, to have the idea and execute it, is diminishing more and more. And so the first thing to realize is that there are no limits to what you can do in this game. And this is why we talk about the whole podcast so far. Don't box yourself into one skill or one niche. If you can sit at the intersection of multiple of these niches and you can learn all these skills, the time between idea and execution essentially goes to zero. So imagine you are a let's go with the health and fitness example again because I think it's understandable and relatable. If you're into some type of esoteric health or just even normal health, you have an idea to launch a community or a product. Okay. You want to launch a free ebook or you want to launch a paid product, paid course on how to master your sexual energy or something along these lines. If you adopt this mindset that I can do the whole thing, I don't need to outsource. Now, outsourcing can be helpful if you want to move faster and you find somebody with specific knowledge in that domain. But the people who are able to move the fastest are the wizards who can do it all. So you can first have the knowledge about health and fitness, then you can whip up the website in a day, then you can whip up the product in a week. And then because you know audience building and marketing and copywriting and audience growth and networking, you can launch that product and have a pretty successful product within a week or two of very focused effort. And so what slows people down is having these bulky teams, needing to have 5 to 10 people on a team just to launch a product. But the creators who can leverage AI and leverage these different tools, they can, in a 1 or 2 person team, move way faster than a team that has 15 to 20 employees. And I've seen this firsthand. I've worked in teams with bigger creators than myself, a couple 100,000 million follower creators. And because they have 10 to 15 people in the chain of command, an idea that could have been executed within a day or two takes a month or two because it has to go through all these checkpoints and has to get verified and has to be cross-referenced by everybody on the team, whereas you and I will, because it's just us at this current point. We have an idea to do this podcast. We do it within 3 days. We post it and bang, it's done. And that is as a result of us leveling up in terms of our wizardry to the point of, okay, we can speak on these topics, we can write out the principles, we can record a podcast, we can edit it, we can make thumbnails, we can post it to YouTube, we can market it, we can do it all. And the more you can do, the faster you can go. And the more you adopt the belief that I can do anything in this digital game. It might be uncomfortable. I might have to go through a learning curve. That's okay. That's part of the game. The more you adopt that belief, the faster you move and the more you iterate. And then the more you iterate, the more you progress.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like now with the internet, there's pretty much a recipe, as it were, to do anything, like a website or something, or you can even ask an AI. And I think with that recipe, someone else has done it. You can find the recipe, you can follow suit. I know you talked about before intelligent imitation. Do you want to kind of comment on that as well in this tenant?
I think that's an important point as well. And there's some nuance here because on one hand, I think it's wise to retain your personal power and your creative taste by not looking outside of yourself at what other people are doing and just creating what you like. However, just for the sake of pattern recognition, it can be very helpful to look around at the digital sphere, at the other creators doing similar things to you, and just take a look. Look at their website, look at their funnel, look at how they're collecting emails. Do they have a lead magnet? What's their product tier like? How are they selling products? Where are they selling products? And once you just kind of collect some of that data in your mind of like, oh, they're building the website this way, they're organizing it that way, they're hosting their courses here, you can pattern match, and then boom, you can just execute it yourself. Whereas if you just try to go at it alone without ever looking at what other people are doing or taking a course and getting all the information synthesized in a very simple, streamlined way, it's going to take longer. So it's this interesting nuance of look to others for pattern recognition and for inspiration. But when you're going and creating your own thing, don't copy. Do what you feel is most aesthetic, most creative, most valuable in your eyes. And if you truly create it from that frame, other people will feel that and resonate with that.
100%. 100%. I feel like a good example is we're doing this podcast, as you mentioned. Another thing we thought of is like, let's clip this up and you use it for short form. And it's like, okay, we're just like other people are doing that. It seems to work. We want to do that. So we're just going to find our own way to do the video editing, clip it up. It's just like, again, you're just always spotting things you can do and be like, I can do that. Let's do that. And then you learn more skills and your uniqueness kind of compounds. Any more thoughts on this 17th tenor? Or do you want to move over to the 18th one?
We can move to 18.
Okay. 10 and 18. Your reputation is your most important asset. Getting into arguments, talking badly about people, and sacrificing your long term reputation for short term gain is never worth it.
Yeah. So in this creator sphere, with a personal brand, especially when you're building it behind your own name, you have to realize that this personal brand, this reputation is going to stay with you, not just for the next year, not for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 years. And things compound and come back together in strange ways given a long enough time frame. And so there's been connections that I've had that I've made 2, 3 years ago. And I'm still in the early stages of this if I zoom out to the 50-year timeline that we're going to be in the game creating to some extent. I've had connections that me and this person connect 2, 3 years ago. We become friends. We maybe fall out of touch, and that's okay. That's normal. That's just the flow of relationships and the flow of life. But then 3 years later, we come back together because somebody needs something from me, or I need something from them, or we know a mutual connection, or we see each other on a social media. We're like, oh my gosh, I remember you from 3 years ago. And that really compounds. And so it comes back to these core moral foundational principles, just like be kind to others, give to others, speak well on others' names, don't talk shit behind people's back because word spreads, and do right by your customers. And that's another thing here too that's important is you can only get away with being manipulative for so long before word begins to spread. And so I've heard through the grapevine, through the back chains and the back links of the creator space, there are some bigger creators running pretty big cohorts, coaching businesses that had really great reputations for a long time. And in my mind, they were great, solid people. And I think they still are good people. But what I keep hearing from multiple people within that company and students that have gone through that curriculum is the way they're selling people is quite manipulative. The way they're teaching people is completely outdated, and they don't actually care about their students. They're just caring about scaling. And so while they present on the surface to have this huge brand, great reputation, good testimonials, word spreads through the back channels, through individual conversations. And I've probably had 5 to 10 conversations with people that have been in this program or worked at this program telling me like, dude, there's some shady stuff going on. I don't feel like it's right. And so while that might be not be known by the masses, that word spreads. And so the reputation over a long enough time frame takes a hit. And this is why you never want to do bad by your customers. You never want to manipulate people because word spreads. And for the long-term compounding leverage and benefits that come from a reputation that can be trusted, it's never worth it to sacrifice that reputation or do anything in the gray moral zone just for a quick dollar.
Hmm. For me, that seems to relate to 10 number 12. All business growth is directly correlated to personal and spiritual growth.
Yeah, how do you see that connecting?
Well, one thing I thought of was kind of power versus force. When you build a good product and you do right by customers, you're playing a long-term game. Or when you have a good reputation, you do right by people, you're playing a long-term game and things don't come back to bite you. But if you target that really short-term win, these things do come back to bite you.
Yes, and another key thing here in terms of a very basic business principle is customer retention or lifetime value of a customer. And I've seen this play out in the short time I've been in the game, relatively short, a few years, is there are people that have come into a different cohort or a different coaching or a different product from me 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and 2 years later, I launch a new product that I couldn't have imagined at that time, but because I built a good relationship with that client and did the best of my ability to serve them and did the best of my ability to just be a genuine human being and a friend to that person, 2 years later, I launched something new and they're like, "Yeah, like I could use this. I trust Jack. I've been in his things before. I trust his moral character and his integrity, and what he's building can also serve me again, so I'm gonna sign up again." And this is the thing as well with your brand and business evolving over time. When I first was getting into coaching, I was just coaching people on ghostwriting. Now, 2 years later, I'm running in person retreats. And so some of those initial people that just signed up for ghostwriting coaching now are people that come to retreats. And I couldn't have imagined it at the time. But because we had a strong human to human connection, now I launched the retreat 2 years later and people decide to sign up. And so understand that this game is a much longer term game than you think in the moment. You don't know what you're going to create 5 years from now. You don't know who could be your business partner 5 to 10 years from now. And those things will all compound to the point of pure magic and leverage and people trusting you when you treat people right in the moment today.
Yeah, it reminds me of 1,000 True Fans, where through doing right by people again and again, and where at whatever level you're at, just doing your best, doing right by people, and not playing these short-term games. You kind of compound to the point where you have these 1,000 true fans that will go to any retreat, or even if you have like a music festival or something, they'll all be there. Or, they're in the communities, things like this. It does compound over time.
Right. And it compounds just through small acts of kindness. Like, just send somebody a video you think that they would like, tell them you were thinking of them. Say, "Hey bro, I was just thinking about you, like how are you doing?" Those things, when they're done in a genuine way, not for the intention of, "Oh, maybe if I send this person a video or ask how they're doing, subtly I have this subtle moral intention that they're going to come back and buy my product." It's not about that. It's about staying in contact with people, following up with people, being kind to people, giving knowledge away freely, right? I think there's a lot of people out there, and there's some nuance to this, but like if somebody asks them a question on Twitter or in the DMs, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I don't answer that. You have to sign up for my coaching program." Now, I get that, but it creates this transactional approach to the game of life and the game of business. Whereas if you give away all that information freely and you're just a kind person, that person's probably going to end up signing up anyways eventually because now they know, okay, this dude knows what he's talking about and I trust him. He's a good guy. I want to get in closer contact.
Hmm. Hmm. Your reputation is your most important asset. Any more thoughts on that?
I think that's good.
Okay, number 19. Aesthetics matter and imply mastery, and mastery happens through iteration and action.
So again, nuance here because I know very successful coaches and creators that have absolutely horrible aesthetics and horrible um, images and designs and taste when it comes to thumbnails, personal branding, website. It looks like garbage, but because they are so valuable themselves, it doesn't matter. However, at the highest levels of business, I believe that business is indistinguishable from art. So the Apple products that Steve Jobs made, he wasn't only concerned with how they functioned, he was also concerned with how they looked, how they presented, how they felt. And when you can iterate your aesthetic as a brand to the point of being absolutely beautiful, it just creates this subtle understanding in the person that comes across your page or your website or your business that this person is official. They know what they're doing. They take their work seriously. They are attentive to the details of their craft. And those subtle things compound into what displays itself as mastery. And mastery, and again, this is a Naval Ravikant thing, but mastery does not happen through time. Mastery happens through iteration. And so something that I saw a lot and I still see in the creator personal brand game is people overthink, oh, should I like, I don't know if I want to change my bio. I just changed it last week. I don't know if I want to change my banner, my profile picture because I just changed it last month. Nobody cares as much as you think they do. If you feel you want to change your bio and your brand to reflect the next iteration of yourself, because everything you create externally is just a mirror and a projection of your own internal frequency and consciousness and skill level, then the more you iterate your bio, the more you iterate your website, the more you iterate the aesthetic and feel and flavor of your brand, you inch closer and closer to mastery. I've probably changed my bio at least a couple hundred times. And I had that same resistance at the start, like, oh, I just changed my bio. Are people going to be confused? Like, I shouldn't change it so much. Iterate, because through the iterations, you inch closer to perfection. You're never going to get to perfect. That's the entire point of this entire game of life, is inching closer to perfection while realizing there are no upper limits to that perfection. But as you iterate, you inch closer to it rather than iterating once a year and trying to be perfect with each iteration. The person who iterates every single day or every single week is going to move much faster and approach mastery much quicker than the person who iterates once every few months or once every year.
Hmm. I like this point a lot because it's nuanced in the way that it's saying yes, the aesthetics matter. Yes, it's good to strive for things to look good and make sense, but it's kind of like on the other side, it's like you get there through the iterations, you get there through the actions. The first one's not be perfect. You're gonna look back at, I'm sure you've done this. You look back at your first, you probably have a screenshot somewhere of your first bio and cover and photo for your personal brand.
Yeah, it looks terrible. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of my YouTube channel, it looks pretty terrible. And I'm sure that will happen again 3 years from now. We'll look back at this podcast and be like, wow, that was really bad in terms of presentation and aesthetics. But that's the entire
Yeah,
point. You keep iterating because it's art and you can never be perfect, but through the iteration, you become perfect or close to perfect.
I
And
feel
with
like a
those
lot of
people,
sorry, I was
yeah,
just gonna say, like, I feel like a lot of musicians, especially, will kind of like cringe max their way to their first album that's truly art. Like a lot of musicians, if you look at their back catalog, have a lot of like years where they just made nothing that good, kind of cringy, and then like one year it just kind of comes together.
exactly. Exactly. And I wanted to add some nuance on the example I gave at the start of like there are really successful people out there who do not have good personal brands or websites or aesthetics, but it's my belief that if they did take the time to iterate and upgrade, maybe by outsourcing or learning it themselves, their brand would then go from somebody who's kind of niche and not that well known, but like is really respected within their small circles to a brand that instantly you click on it, you're like, oh, this dude is official. That's what you want. You want people to click
Mm,
on your brand, your website, your business, and just have that feeling of, oh, this is some high level stuff. This is beautiful. This is aesthetic.
yeah, I love that. I'm really excited to talk about this next point. Tenet number 20. When you need nothing, you're free to create anything. What does that mean to you?
When we come from the energy of need, it limits our long term thinking and our long term perspective. So when you need every month to pay your rent, when you need every month to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, it's very hard to think in terms of months or years. And the truth is that the creators and entrepreneurs who make the most progress and build the biggest businesses, launch the books, build the products that are very long term projects, they are thinking years ahead. Jeff Bezos is thinking 10 years ahead at every single moment because he is not coming from a frequency of need at all. His material needs are covered. And so then his mind is freed and liberate to create much larger projects. And so this is especially talking to, I would say, young people. And we're in this situation ourselves. There is no shame in deciding to One, move back in with your parents so that you can operate from a frequency of creation rather than need. There's no shame in taking a service job as a waiter or a bartender to cover your needs so that you can create and play and build from a frequency of love, from a frequency of creative expression and long term thinking and imaginative play. There's no shame in becoming a volunteer at a place like a hostel and living for free so that you can create from a frequency of love. And it's, of course, if you have more responsibilities, you have payments, you have kids, you have a family, you are going to need that baseline income. But this is why also it can be quite helpful to actually have a backup plan and have a different source of income that's not directly tied to your creative project so that you can create that project from pure expression. So imagine, I think of an example of J.K. Rowling, actually, the author of Harry Potter. When she was, I think, in her late 20s, she was living on government welfare, like getting $2,000 a month from the UK government. And funny enough, that covered her baseline needs. So she didn't actually need anything. She didn't need to write the books. But because her baseline needs were met, she was unemployed. The government was paying her $2,000 a month. She could live at that money. Then her mind was freed to create Harry Potter, which became a billion-dollar enterprise. And so it's not to say go on government welfare, but the point is that, if your baseline needs are met, then your mind can be free to liberate anything. And so start to think creatively in your own life with your own unique situation and circumstances. How can I get to a baseline um, expenses that are covered either by, if you're young, living with your parents, volunteering, living somewhere for very cheap or very free, working a service job on the side, doing a freelance service in as little time as possible a week to cover your expenses. So then your mind is freed and liberated to think big. Because when you can think big, you are separating yourself from 99% of people that are just thinking about this month, next month. When you think big, you create things that have exponential leverage. And so there's no shame in working a side job, living with your parents, working as a volunteer. These things can actually be quite strategic to intentionally be able to build and create from a frequency of creativity, love, and passion.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think about something I think you'd said to me. The line between pride and courage is thin. I think you were talking about in the context of like these status things, like, oh, moving back home with your parents, like, oh, fuck, that sucks. But then, like, on the other hand, it's like, it is courage because you're like, I want to build this thing and this is the best strategic move for me. Do you want to maybe touch on that a bit?
Yes, I would love to. And I think it's really valuable that we're speaking on this. There's been multiple times where I have decided to move back in with my parents when I transcended the pride of living on my own. Because when I was living on my own at certain times, I was in that frequency of needing money every month. And so I was constantly stressed. I was worried. I was burnt out. And I would only be able to create and build from that month. I was limited very much to what's happening in the day to day rather than thinking about the long term. But it's happened multiple times where I say, okay, I'm going to put my pride aside. I don't care what people think. I'm going to move home and it's okay. I'm 22, I'm 21, I'm 23. I'm going to move home. I'm going to build from home, from this frequency of passion, creativity, and love, and not need anything for a few months. And boom, like my mind is expanded to way bigger projects than I could have thought about when I was just trying to think about how am I going to pay my rent this month.
hmm hmm I think also when you think about this point, it's like the whole 10 number 20, when you need nothing, you're free to create anything. To me, kind of means like you're trying to escape this survival month to month, 9 to 5 thing so you can create something big. And I think as well involved in that is realizing that there are countries that can provide a very high quality of life for almost nothing. For example, Thailand, Mexico, 2K a month there is really good living. I've done it. I think you've seen it. One of my friends, he has a condo and it's I think 600 a month, and it has a basketball rooftop, like basketball on the rooftop, and like a pool and all this stuff. And I think when you know what you want, you can kind of sacrifice what people think or like immediate term, like living in, a city in the West, which maybe is nicer to some people. But if you really know what you want and you can try to get as close as you can to not really needing as much, you can play these like longer term games in the long run by getting out of the survival game into this kind of visionary creation game.
Yes, and two examples come to mind of incredibly successful entrepreneurs that lived with basically nothing so that they could create huge things. Where did Steve Jobs start Apple? His parents' garage, right? He didn't need any money. He was living basically for free there. And so he was detached from caring about what other people thought because he was Steve Jobs, and he was kind of beyond the desire for material wealth, which he talked about over and over. Like, he never created anything for money. It was always for the creation of the product. Probably because he went to India, he traveled as a hippie with no money. He found peace in that. He had a lot of spiritual experiences, took LSD, all of those different things. So he got to this internal frequency, it's always internal, of not needing anything so that he could imagine and dream up Apple. Same thing with Elon Musk. I heard a story about when he sold PayPal, he put every single dollar he had back into Tesla, SpaceX, and the Boring Company. And he had to go crash on a friend's couch for a few months while he was building those businesses because he had no money. But he didn't care because he had detached any type of self worth or value from, oh, I live in this apartment, I have this much income. He didn't care. He just wanted to create and build, and he needed nothing internally. And so his mind was free to create these ginormous projects. And so these are obviously two pretty big examples on the scope of Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, but we can learn from these figures. We can kind of imitate their frequency and their patterns to say, what would it be like if I didn't need money? Can I put my pride aside and really live very cheaply or move back home or whatever it is you want to do, and then think up and dream up bigger ideas that will not only lead to much more leverage and money in the long run, but will lead to you creating something that's really intrinsic and from your heart.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I've heard that Musk thing before. And I think he got paid out about $1 billion for PayPal, which is just like it's just insane to sort of re-roll those dice. But it's really just he didn't really need anything. He just wanted enough freedom to create the things he wanted to create, putting the mission first in a way.
Yeah, and in a way, you're more free when you have nothing as well. When you have
Mhm.
nothing, you have no assets, you have no obligations. That is peak freedom.
Yeah, I had that realization when I hit tougher times in Thailand. I was just like, if I could be happy here at what most would consider the bottom or whatever financially, like I'll always be happy. If you're comfortable with that level, in a way, like you'll never fear it. Like people who, um, are so tied to the money they have. Not to
Yeah,
say that's a bad thing, but
it's been
yeah,
quite interesting to observe because I've met people in this space that have had major resistance to paying $1,000 for a coaching program or paying a couple $100 for a call. And they're like freaking out about that. And then I come to find out they have over $100,000 in their bank account. And it's like, wow, like that is, you could live on that for 3 to 4 years in a place like Thailand or Mexico, for example. That's a lot of freedom, but they're not free internally. Whereas the person that has $2,000 and says, fuck it, I'm good with myself. I know I'm going to make this work. I'm going to pay $1,000 in this coaching program because I trust it's going to lead to a higher evolution. Because they're moving with less fear, they can move faster.
again, it leads back to tenet number 12. All business growth is directly correlated to personal and spiritual growth. Like you mentioned, Steve Jobs, for example. It's all an internal game, for sure. And that level of internal freedom, needing nothing, is how you kind of get to these creations that have this high leverage, I think.
Most definitely.
Let's jump to tenet number 21. The more esoteric your interest, the more unique and irreplaceable you become. Thoughts?
I'm going to continue on the Steve Jobs thread here. Now, there are many subtle things that we probably don't even know about that went into the creation of Apple and how Steve Jobs thought about creating Apple and how he operated in his own life that led Apple to being Apple that were so unique, so esoteric. People oftentimes and I have some unique takes on this. They shame Steve Jobs after his death for only eating fruit his whole life. He was like a fruitarian throughout the entire time of creating Apple. Now, why did he do that? Maybe, just maybe, he knew that the mission was so important to him and the collective evolution of humanity that he was willing to sacrifice and willing to submit himself to this lifestyle of only eating the most you could call them sattvic foods. This is also what he learned in India. Sattva foods are high frequency, low density foods. Okay, by him only eating fruit, low density food, he stays as clear of a channel as possible for the mission to come through him. And so his esoteric interests in the fruitarian diet, Indian philosophy, prana, life force energy, and spiritual topics led to him being such a unique person that he could, the vision of Apple could be channeled into the world through him. Now, that's one example of esoteric interest leading to unique outcomes. But even
I
as a
think it's a good
personal
one though.
brand,
I think it's a good one because this just brings it home because that exact thing, the spiritual journey, India, it built a multi-trillion-dollar company and
exactly. And it
a
was,
phone and computer most like people in the West have, I would
yeah,
say.
and we're recording this podcast on Apple product.
Yeah,
And you can almost see it reflected in the minimal design and the aesthetics, the energy that Steve Jobs put into it. And so even as a personal brand and as a creator, again, being multidimensional. Okay, a copywriter that is just a copywriter. It's not that interesting. A copywriter that's into esoteric health and the Ray Peat diet and sexual energy transmutation and consciousness and all of these weird esoteric topics. Now that person becomes much more interesting to other copywriters. He can teach people unique things, and then he attracts that unique company that's aligned with his interest because he is also exploring his own curiosity. And so think about the personal brands that you follow. Think about the personal brands that you find very interesting. The likelihood is that they have unique interests that give them unique perspectives. They've had unique life experiences. They are into unique niche topics, and they create this very multidimensional array of interests and expertise that they can convey in their creations that separates them from just the dude who follows Alex Hormozy and business content, and that's it.
100%. I think when you have these interesting opportunities, it's the network effect of just having one of those weird things in common with someone is going to do you wonders in business, I think. Like a personal example, I had a pretty niche interest in some ways in some more esoteric health stuff, breath work, and then I'm a marketer, copywriter. Like that's a skill I have. It's not who I am, but that now I'm like working with Nick, Jack Sweeney on coherence, and I feel like part of that was just like a knowing you and b having this common interest where I knew a bit about breath work and I was excited about the app and I had the app. So it's just kind of how these like when you have these weird intersections of skills, interests, you become more unique, irreplaceable, 100%.
Right. And if you didn't have the interest in health and breath work and spirituality and prana and chakras and all this quote unquote weird stuff, you wouldn't have even been able to spot the opportunity to work for them. And they would not have spotted you as a proper fit to help them build it.
Mm. Yeah, and I think with these esoteric interests, some people might have a resistance to leaning into these, perhaps because you think it's all about the hustle on the one skill and just like locking in this like monk mode thing, which maybe we can talk about. But yeah, I think by branching out, there's a lot of returns on that, even in the energy you get out of your day to day, just exploring these things. I mean, what have
Mhm.
been some esoteric interests you think that maybe have really helped you, and maybe this leads to number 22. Uh, let me know where you want to go with that one.
Yeah, I'll give another personal example, and I'll use the example of getting the job working for Aubrey Marcus. On the surface, it looked like I just became his marketing coordinator and strategist. Behind the scenes, how did I actually get that job? And this is not well known, and it's a long story in and of itself, but I worked with astrology to time things. I worked with astrology to understand how our energies mutually coincide and what he would need as a Pisces and different things in his chart and how they combine with my chart, and use that to present the offer in a way that I knew would benefit him. So I used astrology. I worked with tarot cards and oracle cards to connect to my subconscious and my intuition, and to be led by signs and symbols and synchronicities in my external environment that led me to send the right message to the right person at the right time in the right frame. And so it was those esoteric interests, which maybe they didn't even know about, but behind the scenes, I was working with these esoteric tools and practices to get myself into the right frequency and to present the right offer. And so you don't necessarily have to go into astrology and all this stuff, which we're going to touch on in the next point, actually. But whether it is you, Will, working with breath work and getting into health and vitality, and then spotting the opportunity for coherence, combining it with your marketing knowledge, or me working with the esoteric tools and knowledge of spirituality, astrology, tarot, signs and symbols, the subconscious, even other dimensional communication, which very esoteric stuff, combined
Yeah.
with my marketing ability to get a job for Aubrey Marcus. And so either through presentation of those skills, you will attract opportunities and find opportunities, or you'll be able to work with those esoteric interests to level yourself up and separate yourself from other people.
Yeah, and I mean, another example I think of is my friend Adrian. He's started with copywriting marketing, and then he's like, "Oh, I really like AI," you know? And then he starts learning AI, and now we're combining AI and marketing on a project we're working on. So it just kind of shows like the more these, if you have, I think, would you say if you have an excitement, for something, follow that thread as much
Ex-
as you can.
Exactly. Your curiosity is not a coincidence. Your curiosity is in some timeline, it is your higher self guiding you to where your rational mind doesn't even know you could be. And so, from my rational mind perspective, getting into this esoteric stuff made no sense. But my higher self, from a higher perspective, an all knowing perspective, can see how all the things come together. And now we're making this podcast and I'm able to explain these things. And in addition to being a creator coach or a guide, I fuse in astrology and metaphysics and human design and numerology and all of these different tools into helping serve a creator in the creator economy with interests that seemingly have nothing to do with it.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Do you want to jump to 10 number 22?
Yes.
I think I might let you say this one. There's a few words here that I think you're gonna
Yes.
nail, but I'm familiar with you.
Yeah. So
Maybe the
tenet
point here.
22, tenet 22 is knowing your Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, life path number in numerology, Western astrology, Vedic astrology, human design, gene keys, and Ayurvedic dosha is a cheat code to understanding yourself and unlocking your highest potential. And I could also add in there, and helping you find the map to your highest potential. So basically what all these things that I just listed are they are different maps that can help you gain a new perspective on yourself. There is something you can look up if you want to look this up called Metatron's cube, and it's essentially a sacred geometry symbol that has a bunch of circles in a hexagon pattern connecting to a central circle in the middle of the hexagon. So the central circle is the true you, the true self, the authentic self, the self that cannot be really defined. The outside circles that mirror back to it are the different branches of these philosophies. It's your personality test, it's your Enneagram test, it's your numerology, it's your astrology, it's your human design, it's your gene keys. And they all provide a reflection and a mirror of who you truly are. So through understanding these maps and by looking within yourself first and foremost, you're going to understand exactly what your unique frequency is. And by adhering to that unique frequency and doubling down on it, you're going to unlock your highest potential, which as a byproduct will be able to serve humanity. And so maybe I could give some examples of like how we work with this, but do you have any questions or anything to add
Yeah,
on that?
yeah. I had an idea where I was gonna mention like my experience. Maybe you could mention yours, but for me, this like self-understanding for me started with the personality because that was the most accessible from a rational scientific perspective is like a Myers-Briggs test. You take a test and it's like, hey, like you might be a INTJ. And you kind of look at that and you're like, oh yeah, I could see that. and it maybe helps you. For me, I think a lot of these things help you actually assure who you already are in some ways. It gives you a map to look at, access things from the subconscious to kind of piece things together. And then the next thing was a Western astrology birth chart, which has a lot of clues in there to kind of continue this. And I was thinking maybe you could kind of talk a bit about your experience moving through these levels and kind of advancing this holistic picture, as you said, with the circle in the middle of who you actually are, and then all these kind of branches.
Yeah, the first thing that's kind of coming to mind is in a business context, you and I will, our energies play together naturally really well, but clarification on our unique roles deepens when we know our astrology charts, we know our numerology. So I'll give a few examples. In Western astrology, I'm very fiery and airy. So I take a lot of action, I move very fast, and I have a lot of ideas. Will is more grounded energy. He has more earth energy in his birth chart. And so he helps bring my fire down into earth and make it more practical. That's one example. Our numerologies also play together very well, as in my numerology code, I'm more of an expressive creative communicator, and Will is actually a visionary leader and an adventurer and explorer as well. So we have an intersection because we're both fives in numerology, but he has 11 energy, which is essentially visionary energy, building energy, and I have 3 energy, which is communicating, writing, and speaking energy. So we play together well there. And even in different side projects and businesses, I'm always looking at what are the person's astrology charts, what are their traits, what are their unique expertise, and how can we play together the best. So it helps in a business context, but it also will help you understand yourself. So, say for example, you find out in astrology, I'm a Leo. Okay, what are the traits of a Leo as a sun sign? And there's so many nuanced traits to your chart. You have so many different planets and different things like that and houses. But as a Leo, my sun sign, I am supposed to be self expressive, charismatic, a leader, creative, bold. But right now in my life, I don't feel very bold. I'm not creating, I'm not expressing. And dang, okay, maybe is something out of alignment, is something out of resonance because in the highest frequency and expression of Leo, that is the bold, charismatic, visionary leader. The lowest expressionary might be a cocky, egotistical, overconfident narcissist, you could say. And so you can look at those frequencies and say, am I aligned with the highest frequency expression of this aspect of my chart, or am I completely out of alignment with it? Because you can see how aligned somebody is with their natural nature by comparing it to their different maps. Okay, if you're a Leo sun sign and you're very creative and expressive and bold, yeah, you're pretty aligned with your natural frequency. If you're not creating, if you're not expressing, if you're not confident, okay, something is out of alignment there because it actually is written in your soul's code and your DNA and your unique frequency that you're supposed to be that way. So, I mean, there's so many nuances with these different branches of philosophy that I just mentioned, which require many more videos and podcasts and books and things to fully articulate and explain. But I think just putting it into people's awareness so that they can look deeper themselves and verify, does this feel true for me? Because there's a lot of resistance in the rational mind to these ideas. But you have to understand that before you had a personality, you were just a unique frequency that came into the universe in relation to everything else in the universe that is all interconnected. And so you can understand yourself in relation to the interconnectedness of the universe through these codes and maps. So I'll leave it there for now, but it's most definitely, in my opinion, worth looking into.
Also, I just had one closing thought just to kind of ground it in some ways and maybe talk a bit about my experience with it. Like I was pretty resistant to checking out some astrology stuff. I think there's like an ongoing campaign to discourage men in the West from looking at astrology. But an interesting thing I found is that some stock trading algorithms do factor in astrology, allegedly. JP Morgan talked about it. Like if you dig deeper into this, you'll understand that these things are used in the world. So it's just a question of like, do you want to use that tool? Do you want to know the weather, as it were, for your life and
Yes.
where these things might be and kind of get more understanding. But yeah, I'd really encourage anyone to check it out.
Yeah, a few more thoughts too. I like that you brought up JP Morgan. You start to look into this and you realize Nikola Tesla was into this. You realize JP Morgan, a billionaire banker, said the secrets to wealth creation are in astrology. You realize Carl Jung, the greatest astrologist, or sorry, psychologist of all time, was also an astrologer. You realize Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding members of the United States, was into astrology himself. And so you start to connect these dots together of like, okay, there's the average Western man, let's say, that's like astrology's bullshit. It's just for like teenage girls. And then you tell him, oh, but this billionaire banker said it was very important in creating his wealth. It starts to break down the rational mind and open like, wait, there might be something here.
100%. 100%. Alrighty. Moving to tenet number 23. To become who you're meant to be, you must transcend everyone's opinion of you and create your own path. I mean, what does that mean to you? How is that kind of being like a theme maybe in your path?
It builds off everything we just touched on in 22 because your unique soul's code, your unique soul's frequency is so unique. It is not going to be anywhere close to anybody else. Nobody's DNA is even close to matching your own personal DNA. And so, to truly express your highest potential as a human being and as a soul, you are going to go your own path, right? If you are walking on somebody else's path, you're not being authentic to yourself. When you're being authentic to yourself, you're going to start to get into things, express things, create things, share things that are going to be weird in the eyes of others. That is just their collective consciousness, their normalcy trying to pull you back into normalcy. But your highest expression is going to be outside of everybody else's opinion of you. Again, Steve Jobs. Everybody else is like, he's a fucking idiot. He should not have been eating fruit. Like, he should be eating meat. Okay, who else built Apple, right? To reach his fullest potential, he said, fuck everybody else's opinion. I'm going to get a few hours of sleep at night. I'm going to be working at 3 a.m. and I'm going to live in a place that has no furniture and only put a picture of Einstein and Maharaji, an Indian guru, on the floor. And I'm going to have nothing. I'm going to eat basically nothing. And I'm going to actualize my fullest potential. And so when you walk that path to your highest self, it is going to require that you look weird in the eyes of others. You get judged and criticized, which is oftentimes just imaginary in your own mind. And if you do that for long enough, you're going to not only walk your own path, but you're going to become such a unique individual that eventually everybody will still not understand you, right? Every genius that you look up to, every great entrepreneur, they are so unique and different from the average person, but there is a pattern there that you can imitate, that if I really want to become everything that I could be, I'm going to also become very unique and different from everybody else in the process. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious for you, Will. We're very in the early stages of our lives still, but
100%.
how is this played out for you in terms of transcending outside opinions?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna add a few thoughts here. For me, I think for me, hitting my first post online was hard, and I feel like I think you told me you had a similar experience. Um, because we have this kind of conditioning where as you're growing up, you're in high school, you're in university, you want people to like you, you want to fit in. But I think like once you mature past that and you're getting this game, you got to really embrace who you are, and you have to realize at the soul level, you really are only answering to your highest self. That's the only opinion that should really be a factor in this thing.
Mhm.
And getting there, I will say, is not a piece of cake, and at every step, it requires a bit more courage. But as you begin to level up and things start to click together, it becomes more obvious that this is what you're here to do. And I think for me, it really clicked when I was in Thailand. I moved out to Thailand about 6 months ago. I was out there for 5 months, totally new culture, totally new circle of friends around me that were into this business stuff. I was talking to people about, in my chats about like spirituality. I was connecting with the right people that were in this resonant with the identity I was stepping into. And I think that's where it kind of shifted, where it's like you start to not really care as much. And I think my biggest advice would be start to connect with people who have a similar goal to you or talking about the same things as you, similar interests, of where you're going. And you know, this is the content you're watching, it's the people you're talking to on a daily basis, because that is going to slowly mold you through you imitating or talking about the right things and kind of validate, who you're being. Because it's hard to, in complete isolation, say, I'm just going to become the person I need to be, or I know I am. But when you start to kind of talk to the right people, you put yourself in the right environment, you take these small steps of courage to put yourself out there, um, with your unique interests, what you want to do with your life, even stepping out of the 9 to 5 game, and maybe accepting a lower status. I'm quoting with my hands right now, a lower status in life by, not making your standard issue 5, 6K a month, but it's all worth it because you're stepping into a life that's going to feel like you and not a life that's just going to be some weird thing where you're just playing a character. You're just playing a character what you think people should be. You end up in a marriage probably by continuation of that where you're just being who you think your partner wants you to be. You're in a job at 50 where you're just being who your manager wants you to be. And worst of all, your kids, like, because you just live this life that's not you, your kids will never know the real you either.
Mm.
So you have to think about that. And it's like, do you want to be known for who you actually are and actually liked by a select few people for who that is, or maybe many in most cases? Or do you want to play a character and be maybe liked by some people for that character and then still disliked for that character by some people? I think to become who you're meant to be, you must transcend everyone's opinion of you and create your own path. Tent number 23. Very true.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit on there as well. Oftentimes, this will require transcending those who are closest to you, their opinion of you. And so when I first left college to do all this online stuff, I had to transcend the opinion of my parents. I had to transcend the opinion of my grandparents. I had to transcend the opinion of my teachers, my classmates, and my friends at school who all thought it was fucking crazy. But it was my internal guidance that said, no, this is the way. I can feel it in my bones and in my core. This is what I meant to do. This is who I meant to be. And you said when you start to connect with people that are also on the same path, it can be helpful and it can validate what you're doing. But I would add the nuance that eventually you have to also transcend the opinions of those who are even on the same path as you, because you have to continuously iterate to create your own path. If you just switch your barometer of validation from your parents and your close social circle at home to now people on the internet, that's just another trap. Maybe it's a
Mm.
better step, but eventually, even the people in the online game, you have to just disregard all their opinions and continuously go your own way. And I've fallen into the trap myself. I have outsourced my own barometer of opinion to people that are older than me in the game. I've outsourced it to an astrologer or a psychic who tells me something and then I take it as true. But what I keep coming back to over and over is that I've said it from the beginning. Nobody knows your situation like you do. Trust yourself. You have to go your own way. You have to find the courage to continuously iterate and evolve to go your own path. And on that path, you'll meet the right people. And people are interested in you because of your uniqueness and your desire to become your individual, unique self. So I just wanted to add that little bit of nuance before we go to the last point here.
Yeah, I like that. It's super powerful. I think it brings it all down to just trust yourself and this idea of like it's just you and your highest self, and that's it. And you're kind of just in this game to kind of see how close you can get to that, infinite potential, really.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 10 number 24. Before you get paid for your life's work, maximize space in your schedule by reducing your responsibilities to the minimum to make a living and maximize asynchronous work.
Yeah, so I think this is a good tenet to close the podcast with is we're kind of coming full circle with many things we said at the start. And on those initial pivots to freedom, right? It's pivots. It's pivoting to higher degrees of leverage, higher degrees of autonomy. If you can find ways to make 2K, 3K, 5K a month while minimizing the time required for that work, you are maximizing the time where you get to discover who you really are and build and pursue your life's work. Now, I also added in there maximizing asynchronous work. You want to be on as little meetings as possible. You want to be on as little calls as possible. You want to have as little people to cross validate and check your work as possible. Ideally, as a freelancer, you have a few clients and you are working completely asynchronously. They give you the project, you complete it on your own terms, you send it to them, and boom, you're done. You don't want to be hopping on a ton of meetings. The trap is that these companies and these creators you're working for, will give you the shiny golden handcuffs of a higher status position within that company. Now you have the responsibilities of getting on meetings. You have the responsibilities of managing people. You have more responsibilities within that company. And while you might have a higher status position and you're making more money, you are consequently lowering your autonomy and freedom. And so, can you be so firm in your vision and your desire to become your own self actualized self and to maximize your autonomy and leverage that you will decline the higher status position within a freelancing company, stay at a minimum income, build on the side to create something that is fully autonomous?
Hmm. Yeah, this is massive. I think, yeah, as you said, it comes back to 10 number one. You only need one client paying you 2K a month to create a life of freedom. It's just like how you do that. Yeah, exactly. Any more thoughts there?
I think that one pretty much speaks for itself. And I think it encapsulates everything else we said in this podcast. And this was a very fun podcast to run through. I wonder how long we're at. We probably are at like
It's
3+
2:22 right
hours.
now on
Of course,
August
it's
2nd.
2:22. Of course.
We gotta
See, it's
quickly
all
cut it before.
synchronous.
Yeah, no. I was looking at that. That's funny. All right. Well, I guess I'll say thank you so much, I guess, for co-creating this. But I don't know. You want to wrap it up here?
Yeah, I think this is a good place. If you made it to the end of this podcast, thank you for listening. We hope that you got some value out of it. We hope you got some new mental models and principles to orient yourself towards. If you want to work in closer capacity with Will and I, consider checking out the Transcendent universe and the array of different containers and projects that we have within there, which are a sovereign creators community, which is going to help you take those first steps towards building a creator business and taking the steps necessary to achieve a life of freedom. We're running retreats. Next one is going to be in March 2026 in Thailand Expedition Part 2. We're also building a higher ticket community called the Transcendence community, which is brewing in the background. We are building out an array of different courses for you guys in many different holistic self actualization domains. And we have some one on one coaching opportunities as well. And so you can click the link below, check out the Transcendence universe. Feel free to message us on social media, ask us some questions. And yeah, we would love to know what you guys think. And also, we'll probably be making a part 2 at some point as additional principles come up that we are learning as we are building in real time. So, thank you for watching to the end. If you found it interesting, share it with a friend that you think might like it. And yeah, we're just grateful for your presence and your time and your attention. And thank you, Will, for doing this with me. It was very fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I feel like I'm learning in real time. But yeah, anyone listening, thank you for being here. And I hope you have a great day. Cheers.